think we'll get started, everyone. Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Thank you. Thank you. I'd like to welcome everyone here this evening to this special council meeting, where we are talking about our draft budget, but also some notices of motions as well. So firstly, I'd like to acknowledge the land that we meet on tonight is the traditional lands for the Kaurna people, and that we respect their spiritual relationship with their country. We also acknowledge the Kaurna people as the custodians of the Greater Adelaide region, and that their cultural and heritage beliefs are still as important to the living Kaurna people today. So roll call, we have two apologies. We have one apology from Councillor Hughes, and we have another apology from Councillor Vallelonga. Are there any motions to grant leave of absence, councillors? There are none. I don't have any leave of absence and there's no non-attendance. So deputations, I received a request for a deputation today. Mr. Ian Tooley, if you'd like to come forward, thank you. You'd like to turn that microphone on when you get there as well. Thank you. There we go.
Thank you, Mayor, for accepting my deputation request. Speaking about the budget, councillors, you've got quite a task ahead of you with the challenges in this budget. I'd just like to point out a couple of things and perhaps a couple of savings as well. According to the figures in the budget papers, 2022-23 budget sits at $1.8 million deficit with 8.8 million borrowings. I'm reading from your document. 23-24 budget sits at 2.64 million deficit and 3.5 million in borrowings. How big, though, is your total debt? It's bigger than that, and it's growing. As Sharon Perkins, the Executive Finance Officer, acknowledges in her budget report on pages 6 and 7, which I know you've read, that the top budget takes a hit when you're gifted assets from developers. And Ms. Perkins draws your attention to the fact that you can't do much about that until the following budget, where you may choose to make savings by downgrading the quality of service or amenity to those. That's the very thing that worries those people that lives in Aspire, Woodvale, Springwood and Hewitt. That when you take them over, your budget takes a hit and that you might downgrade them. You are massively in the red and it's getting worse. This budget includes two massive expenditure items, big ticket, big risk items, that if cut, could save you up to $1 million. You wouldn't then be looking at least 3.5% in rate increase again at a time when people are struggling. The first one is boundary reform. The risk in this current budget is over $400,000 alone. And we know that the rate revenue from new assets is neutral at best. We've known that. Mr. Anat's told us that many times. We know that the budget will take a massive hit if Hewitt was to come over and the Concordia residential developments were to come over. There's no money to be made in rates. Current staffing costs for this council sit just below 15 million. And if you double the area with Concordia and Hewitt, you would probably have to double the size of your council. You're talking an area bigger than Mawson Lakes, bigger than West Lakes coming on board. So I would anticipate your staffing costs would rise to $30 million. So this is going to force more and more debt for decades to come. But most worrying, though, is the lack of financial modelling, the lack of risk assessment by the audit committee, and the huge risk of this boundary reform exercise. It's actually willful negligence of the town of Gawler by putting the council at such huge financial risk. When the town of Gawler considered adopting the aspirational Climate Emergency Action Plan, Councillor Hughes, Councillor Koch and Mayor Redman insisted and argued that the CAP must go to the audit committee for full cost and risk assessment, arguing that to not do so was to put council at risk and to fail in council's responsibility. Councillor Koch quoted the LGA legislation and regulations, and he stated emphatically at that meeting that without knowing the full cost impact of the CAP, which was aspirational, remember, was to breach the regulations and putting council at great financial risk. These same arguments and these same LGA regulations apply even more to the boundary reform because it's not aspirational, it's actual. And to hear these arguments, go to item 16.4 of the 23rd of August 2022 meeting where you hear them. And you'll hear Councillor Koch quote the LGA Act principles 8A and 8J, and he states the following, and I quote him, "Council will be failing in its duty and function to know the full cost of the endeavour if it doesn't go to the audit and risk. Council is not doing its due diligence if it doesn't go to the audit and risk. Council is not performing its core responsibilities and principles if it doesn't go to the audit and risk. Council is not demonstrating good public administration if it doesn't go to the audit and risk. And council is not performing to the LGA principles."
30 seconds, thank you.
The second one, councillor, is the Pioneer Park wall. By the time you have finished with that, you'll be over $500,000. The answer is staring you in the face. You've just seen the stables rebuilt at the back of the Bushman's Hotel. If you were to demolish that wall, salvage the stones and rebuild it to standard, you will do it at a fraction of the cost. If you keep going the way you're going, you'll end up tilting up a salt damp wall.
5 minutes, thank you very much.
Mayor, as there's no one else here, may I have just one more minute, please?
You can have 30 seconds.
Thank you, Mayor. If you just tilt the wall up, it won't be bonded to the foundation. It won't be earthquake proof. You'll have to have a void at the back of it and it'll continue with salt damp. We saw this with the one on High Street and we saw it with the one on Lindott Road. And we saw tens of thousands wasted on that. You can save in this budget if you would demolish, reclaim the stones, rebuild to standard, and you will not have a void at the back of it. And you'll have a wall that looks identical to what it is now, but will last for decades to come. There's just two items, councillors, that if you really look at that, you've got the potential to save hundreds of thousands, possibly up to $1 million on those two.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay. Right, now, are there any declarations of interest, councillors? There be none. We'll move on to motions. The first motion I raised in regard to Christmas decorations. Is there somebody who wishes to move that motion? You happy to move that way, Councillor Hennessy? Yeah. Do you wish to speak to it at all? No. Do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Davies, do you wish to speak at all? No. Discussion? Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. Just to be clear, can I just have the page number that that line item is on? Just in our. Sorry, I should have written it down earlier.
You mean where I'm up to? I'm on page 3.
No, I know where you are. Just the motion number is P230832.
That's correct.
Just where that one is on our attachments.
Oh,
Just so we can pull
right.
that up, so we can look at that.
let's have a look. It's an extra page.
33.
There you go.
Yep.
Yeah, it's up the top. Page 31 of 32, right at the back.
Sorry, Mayor, I should have this ready.
So it's a separate page at the
Thanks.
back. You got it? And it's at the top.
Oh, yeah, perfect. No worries. No, thank you, Mayor. Yeah, look, I'm happy to support this. We do cop a bit of scrutiny, I think, in our Main Street decorations, our banners, you know, all those sorts of things, and how we could be doing it better. I would like to be able to see this come to fruition. So at Christmas time, we bring that spirit in, which I think is a very important thing. And what that does and what that leverages on a fellow elected members, be it in regards to potentially Christmas pageants and all that, it sort of buys into that theme. So yeah, I'd like to see us get into that space more, and this is all just part of it. But yeah, I just thought I'd just provide those comments quickly.
Thank you very much. Any other discussion? If not, councillor Hennessy, you move the motion. Are you happy for me to put that motion? Okay, I'll put that motion. All those in favour, please raise your hands. Carried unanimously. So now we move over the page and it's councillor Koch, Gawler Community Garden. You're happy to move that way? Do you wish to speak at all? There we go.
Look, I've been following the community garden for a lot of years now, and they're a very active group and they've been working very hard at what they want to achieve. They've, with the funding that they originally got from council, they constructed the fence and they actually found some savings, and they could have moved on to some other things, but unfortunately they had to put in the irrigation, and that was putting a metre in from the main road into their little area, and that cost them about $7,000. So I would have hoped that they would have been able to tap into some existing water at the site and maybe just put a slave meter in and just worked off that slave meter, but unfortunately that didn't happen. So this is really to allow them to actually do the final establishment of the grounds of the area. So you know you've got to prepare the soil. You need to do earthworks. You need to create the beds. You need to put the irrigation in. There's a fair few costs there, and once they can get those foundation items put in place, then they can start actually growing, you know, get growing. So these are really like the infrastructure you need in a community garden for it to start working. So I would ask everyone to support this because they're a very hardworking, industrious organisation, little group, and it does comply with our policy on community gardens. And I won't read the whole policy, but it does comply. Thank you.
Do I have a
Yep.
Do I have a seconder for that motion?
Yep.
Yes.
Depending on the answer, it might assist. So just so I'm clear, the water meter that the community garden had to install was a bit of a latent condition. And you know, oh God, we need the water meter installed. So they paid for that fee. However, they're not the landlord per se of that area, yet they provided a service to one of our blocks that if they're all said and gone, we'll have a separate meter there. Do you
want to
follow?
answer it?
Yeah. Yeah, no,
There's a separate meter.
there is
there.
a new meter that
Yeah.
that they had to pay for
Yes,
on a block of land that they do not own. But should they move, we have now a new meter.
that's
in-
right.
Yeah,
That's correct.
yeah.
Hmm. Sorry, I'll just, thank you. You just want to explain?
As I said, it would have been better if they could have tapped into an existing high pressure point and put a slave meter in. So the slave meter just measures, it's just a meter, it just measures the kilowatt, you know, the kiloliters that you actually use, and you could have just worked off that. But unfortunately, that wasn't possible for one reason or another. So they had to actually put in their own line, and that cost them $7,000. So a high pressure line from the main road in, and a meter, a separate meter that they're responsible for.
Okay, thank you. I think that clarifies that question. Thank you. Are you happy to second? Have I got a seconder for the motion? Yep, you're happy to second?
Yeah, look, I'll speak to it if I can, because I think I
Yeah.
need to explain this one. I'm glad
So
that,
seconded by Deputy Mayor. Thank
Yeah.
you, Anna.
and I appreciate the explanation there. The reason I'm seconding this is the way that I look at this is I don't think a community group should have invested in infrastructure that's basic service, in my opinion, regardless of what I think about a community garden club in that location, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That doesn't come into this debate, in my opinion. What we have now got is a block of land that has a service to it, which is a more valuable asset to the town of Gawler at the cost of a community club. So I think the reimbursement of that is sound in my opinion. So this is why this particular motion has my support, because originally I was sort of going, look, we've invested in the garden club over some other community groups. But I'm seeing this as a payback to the site. So I'm happy to second this, and I appreciate you explaining it, because that has, helped.
Thank you. Councillor Hennessy.
Thank you, Mayor. I have some problems with this because I'm also involved and have been approached by this group, and I haven't heard them seeking reimbursement for that money. So I don't feel like I've got enough information. I mean, the motion doesn't say the $7,000 is for reimbursement. I'd like staff to be able to give us some input, please, about what the conditions of their lease and their arrangement are. And I think this is a way for me, I'm feeling uncomfortable because we have systems whereby community groups can apply for support through our grants funding. And this just seems to have come out of the out of the blue. And I just feel like it's setting a bit of a precedent. So perhaps the first thing through you, Mayor, is could we have staff explain to us about that meter? Because I didn't realise it cost them the whole 7,000, and maybe that will give me some clarity.
Who would like to answer that question? Is that you, Wendy?
It is me through you, Mayor Karen. I will have to take the detail of the question on notice, other than saying that the provision of water supply to the site was a core part of the lessee's requirement under the lease agreement, and that is a common requirement as part of our third-party lease deeds. I can provide the exact detail though in follow-up email.
Okay, so that's part of their lease agreement, that they had to provide a meter. Did they have to provide a meter or just water? Or did they just have to assess how much water they're using?
I will have to go back in and look at the lease, the exact wording of the lease.
Because that's actually quite important.
It was definitely specific in the lease, but I will have to go back and have a look at the wording.
Okay, thank you. Now I might go to Councillor Solomon. He had his hand up next.
Thank you, Mayor. It was just a question in regard to I guess the process that this has been to. Obviously, it's not one of the bids that was in the original bids that were put forward as part of that process. I'm just wondering what level of scrutiny it's had from staff, and what the and how the financial figure's been arrived at by virtue of that.
I don't have those answers. Has anyone got those answers? Sharon, thank you.
So I would sit there and say that there's been no scrutiny, because we actually received it on Monday, on Monday.
Yeah.
So as in yesterday, so
Yeah.
effectively to get the understanding of what the figure is to
Yeah.
sit there and say so.
Yeah. So from a process point of view, Councillor Solomon, people can put up and move things up and above the line, below the line, or bring in new bids if they so choose. What this council meeting is about is applying a level of scrutiny, asking questions if you're not clear about things, etc. So Councillor Koch, have you got any more information around the $7,000, etc.?
I spoke to one of the committee members last Friday,
Yeah.
and she explained what happened. And there was always almost a feeling, or the process would work, that a slave meter would be able to be put in.
Yeah.
That was always a concept, an idea. I've spoken about it a few times, but unfortunately that wasn't possible.
Okay.
And that's why they then had to have that expenditure of that $7,000.
So this in your preamble, it says here, soil preparation, constructing the growing beds, any trellising and installation of an irrigation system.
Yes, because that's the infrastructure you need at a community garden, the base
Right.
infrastructure.
Okay.
You need to ameliorate the soil. You need to
Yeah.
put in a proper irrigation system with a non-testable backflow prevention device. You need a whole range of things.
I might go to Councillor Lorna now.
Thank you very much for that. Do we actually just have the cost of what it is for the meter? Because I understand what Deputy Mayor Shanks is saying, and also understand what Councillor Hennessy is saying. So I'm interested that if we are developing this product, this parcel of land that can be used for future benefit to other communities, then I'll sway that way. But we've got a $7 grand figure here. What is the actual cost of that meter? I'm not worried about the irrigation or the soil or anything else. That's up to this community group that started something that they need to do.
Through the mayor, when I spoke to the committee member, that was the figure that they gave me, that's what it cost them to put the meter on,
Okay.
the water.
I think we've clarified that that was the cost. As far as we're aware. Okay. Councillor Hennessy, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, and I'm sure staff will come back to that, but I've got an email conversation between Chris Parish and Ron, which is also on the committee, and it's nowhere near, I can see the conversation about the valve and it's nowhere near 7,000. So I think we're not getting a clear picture, which I'm sure staff will come back. And on that basis, Paul, and I also support this group, I think they're doing some fabulous things. I just feel completely in the dark. I think we might not have
Okay.
a very clear conversation.
It may be worth withdrawing this motion for now and bringing it up at a later stage with when further information. I'd ask staff to clarify how much the meter cost. I'd also ask that we, all elected members, including myself, is included in some of these emails that we're not being included in. Because we need to understand if there's email correspondence around costs, etc., then we needed to have that prior to this. But so I think that we could lay this on the table. If somebody wishes to lay it on the table, and we could raise it. Anybody can raise it further down the track. So, are you comfortable with that? I just think we need a little bit more information. Yeah.
I took that on face value from.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
And,
Absolutely.
and
Yeah.
it's the meter, the connection of the meter, plus the trenching, plus the laying of the high pressure line, et cetera, et cetera. So it's just not just a meter, it's the whole shebang.
So I'm just making a suggestion that and we can raise it from the table at a future time. And are you comfortable with that, seconder? Well, I might get somebody who hasn't, who's moved a formal motion. Yeah, you certainly can. Do people give Deputy Mayor leave? Yep, you've got leave.
So just quickly to speak, so when we do new meter installation, typically the fee to get a new meter is anywhere north of $5,000 to $5,500. Then there is some connections, trenching and everything like that. I definitely would expect some sort of concession to be given to some sort of community groups, and I'm talking what we have to pay, not the non-for-profits and stuff like that. But we might be able to just provide the SA Water invoice to be able to go substantiate all of this, because it's seeming like it's getting a little bit back and forth. The reason I was comfortable with it is because this is the sort of money that I'm used to spending on that service. And also that service provides for future use of the site, be a garden club, be whatever, but that will be sitting there for the entirety again. So that's where that sits, but providing that background, I'm all for, to be honest, because that makes sense.
Thank you. I think that clarifies. I've got the support of the mover and the seconder now. If somebody wishes to lay it on the table, are you happy to do that? You happy to? So Councillor Davies is moving a formal motion to lay this matter on the table, seconded by Councillor White, and I'm going to put that motion. All those in favour, carried unanimously. Have you got that, guys? So it was seconded by Councillor White. And it was carried unanimously. Seconded by Councillor White. Yep.
So now it's laid on the table.
Yep.
Is Councillor Koch allowed to change his preamble to maybe touch on reimbursement? Because that came out of the debate, but not part of the preamble.
Oh, that's
How
a good
does-
question.
how does that work?
That's a very good question. I'll need to take advice on that because once you lie something on the table, it gets raised at the point we stopped.
Okay,
At the point we stopped.
right. So an amendment
point.
would have to
And,
on the
and
preambles are.
yeah, so it will still be moved by yourself and seconded by you, and we raise it at the point. So CEO takes notes. You would have written down who spoke and who didn't speak. And we need to understand who spoke, who didn't speak, when it's raised from the table, and it goes from there onwards. You could, we could have a variation with the mover and seconder, and we could do that when it's raised from the table, when we have more information about this matter. And with the majority of the council agreeing to that, so we could do it that way. And that might be a better way.
Yeah, because I think it will just capture the sentiment that I think you're speaking to that is lacking in the work.
Yeah, so I think we'll gather some more information. And thank you very much for your graciousness, both mover and seconder, and thank you for the debate. I think that it's a worthy motion, but yeah, I think we just need a little bit extra information. So, all right. So now, Councillor Solomon, over to you.
Need me to move that one?
No, it was carried unanimously.
Oh,
It was
sorry.
carried unanimously. So you
parade?
need to move,
Yes,
if you
yeah,
wish
yeah,
to, if you wish to.
So I'm
Yeah.
happy to move that way, that the recommendation under 5.3.
Yep.
I'll speak to it. So this item here, also the support for community Christmas parade. That's something which has come about because of a conversation which has been happening in the community, and it's evolved quite rapidly since that time, where I originally asked those questions on notice about the costing of this. It's really exciting to see so many people coming on board and really wanting to support that parade in some form, and hearing a lot from service clubs across the community, a lot from businesses, from people who are just residents who remember back to times when there were other Christmas events. And I think that's something which was spoken to by Glenys Clothier, who was been leading this and who appeared in the Bunyip last year, talking about the fact that Christmas felt, also beginning of this year, talking about the fact that Christmas spirit didn't seem to be here this year. And that was the sentiment which was shared quite broadly across the community. There's been action taken. I believe there is an email which we're all privy to where
I haven't
yes,
seen any correspondence.
I could direct. Well, I think that there is some correspondence regarding allocating a staff member to speak, I think with Tony Piccolo in regard to that. And I believe that's in an email form, which came to elected members, because I think it was directed to the CEO. But I'm happy for yourself or the CEO to clarify if that's not the case.
Well, I don't
That's
recall.
my recollection.
I don't recall. I don't have it in front of me.
Yeah. And if you have advice on how in future that could be better supplied, I'm open to accepting that. I'm not aware of a way we can attach that to the motion, but I would expect that councillors where emails have appeared are up to date with those. But I think this motion is ultimately about looking to support that. It's something which has been raised by the community. It's a figure which is calculated on the basis of the estimate of what a street closure plus advertisement would cost. And I believe that figure is quite comprehensive in the sense that it's been, when it was estimated, it was estimated quite high. And that's exactly what that is. And it's similar to what maybe you might see in some other councils like Regional Council looking at some of the support which is given there. I know the support varies across councils. That Playford has different type of in-kind support which they give to their Christmas parade which occurs there. But there's a variety of ways which we can do this. The reason I've put it up is because it was suggested that this should be something which was put up to ensure that the money was there. Otherwise, it may not happen and we may not have the money to allocate towards it. And that's why I've chosen to put it in the budget.
Do I have a seconder? Councillor Davies?
Yeah, look, I mean, I think it's always good to have the local community active and engaged, and I think we should be adaptive and if they've got something that could be a real benefit to the community, I'm happy to try it out.
Before we go any further, I've got a question for Mr. Barrett. This sits under your remit. Who's the staff member that's liaising with this group?
So through the chair, I've been nominated to liaise with the Honourable Tony Piccolo MP, but I haven't received any correspondence as to meeting details at this point in time. So I am the nominated officer from council though.
Okay, so no further meetings at this stage?
I haven't been advised of any meetings at this point in time.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hennessy, got your hand up?
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I also like the fact that the community's getting organised, and I did go to that first meeting in February, and I think it's great, and it will end up with a really good outcome where the community says how they wish to celebrate Christmas in the town. My problem comes in that we haven't had any more information since then, and I guess I am very conscious that we are now spending, it's getting very close to 100, it will be very close to $100,000. We've already put additional money into this the last year of the Apex organised Christmas. It seems to me though that if we can somehow support this, we may have a situation where as the Apex Christmas, whatever it is, concert comes to an end, we might be able to merge this as part of what the community would like to happen next. So I'm not saying I'm not supporting it. I just wonder whether, and maybe it's a question through you, Mayor, to the staff, could this money, when it is firmed up and we have a definite budget before us, could this be applied to the activation budget later in the year? Is that something that could be used to deal with this?
I think if this motion gets passed, it will be for a Christmas parade because it's a resolution of council. So if you wanted to change it at all, I'm not suggesting you would, but if you wanted to change it at all, you'd have to put in either or activation budget or something like that. But that would be a matter for the mover and the seconder and for council to endorse. So, Mr. Barrett, can you add anything further at this stage?
So through the chair, we do have the responsive residual budget within the draft activation budget that could be used for this purpose as it's an outdoor event. So that budget is for outdoor events and activities only within Gawler, and that responsive residual can be applied on application to specific events. So there is potential depending on finalised costs, budgets, locations and all those sorts of things.
But if this motion gets passed.
If this motion gets passed as is,
yes,
then it would be a unique project within council's
it would
budget.
be a Christmas parade specifically, I think, because that's the nature of this motion. So I'm just clarifying. I hope that clarifies that. But there is money in the activation budget for outdoor activities. Councillor Kosh, you've got your hand up.
Can I just get an outline of what will actually happen? So we're going to have floats, close the road off, have some floats.
I don't know.
Is that right? Oh,
I'd
it's not floats. So it's
Councillor
just,
Solomon, do you want to clarify the aim of the Christmas parade?
Yeah, I can clarify that. So the like as was said, it hasn't gotten to that stage yet. If it's going to occur, it will occur in December. We can't do another budget before then. The issue was, and the advice that I got was that if this is in the budget now, then we don't move forward with it at all and we can't support that. So that was the reason why I put it up now, because that's the advice that I had received.
Yeah.
So that's why it's in here. If there's a spending, if it doesn't all get, if council doesn't decide to allocate all of that money, or there's a way which doesn't cost all of that money, I have to clarify how that money is then, whether that's just a saving or what
It
happens to
would
that
be a
money otherwise.
saving. It would
Yeah.
be a saving, yeah. So you've got something?
Yeah, I just want to clarify, is it a street, main street closure and an event in the main street?
Again, councillor Solomon, if you can clarify.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, it's not necessarily the main street. The idea is that there would be a parade of some form in a street in Gawler, and that would require a street closure. The degree to which businesses would be involved is not yet determined. There's been great input from service clubs and businesses about that occurring, but the idea is that there would be a parade that the floats. It's not determined yet which street it is not determined yet. This costing here is the cost it would cost to close the main street, plus advertising materials, etc., because that is the largest possible cost for an event like this. And that's why that number's been given, because closing another street wouldn't be as costly as closing the main street.
Okay, I think that clarifies. Okay, any other discussion, councillor White?
Thanks, Mayor Redmond. Yeah, I'll support this motion. I think what was shown earlier in the year was that there's a great deal of community support behind this project, behind this concept, as well as business support. I understand that while this isn't, everything's not set in stone at the moment, I think there was huge community interest. And I think what putting this in our budget as a unique item actually shows the community is that we're being proactive, not reactive. We've seen that there is a great deal of community support. We're actually allocating some funds that we can use for a great community event. And that way the specifics will be worked out down the track. But I think as Councillor Solomon said, there's been a lot of work to get to this figure of what the event looks like from a high level point of view. We've got the community support there. If we put this in, I think that can only drive community interest even more, and we can actually create something from the get-go with council leading the way all the way along with the community, as opposed to the community going ahead planning all this and then us scrambling to maybe find some money that we might not have budgeted for because it's later in the year or whatever the circumstances are. So I think while the specifics, I do agree a bit with Councillor Koch that yes, it's a little bit, we don't know all the information yet. However, I also think that we have a responsibility to support the deal of community interest that has been invested in this, and that this will actually play a role in moving forward to the next stages of planning as December gets closer.
Mr. Barrett, in regard to street closures and the costing, can you just clarify that, please?
Certainly. So through the chair, my understanding from this budget bid item was that the cost for the street closure that Councillor Solomon has incorporated were the actual costs of the main street closure for the Gawler Civic Centre opening event in 2019. Those costs are 4 years old. They would need to be updated to current rates for a full street closure of Murray Street for current day. So just wanted to really clarify that. Depending on the location, there might be cheaper street closures, because if the street didn't have many intersections, for example, or it was a back street somewhere else within Gawler, it'll be a cheaper exercise than a main street. It may not require anti-terrorism barriers that we had to do for the Civic Centre opening. But just to be really clear, it's not the actual cost of closing Murray Street in current day terms. It was a 2019 event.
Okay, thank you. Right, any other discussion? Deputy Mayor, I'll go to Deputy Mayor now.
Just a question first, Mayor. The conversation that we're having earlier talking about a budget for activation and open air events and stuff. Is there any scope to, if we're short here, is there any scope to turn around and say, hey, can we use some of that budget for street closures for an open?
What's the capacity in the activation budget, Mr. Barrett?
So through the chair, I'd have to take the exact number on notice because it's not in my head. However, I believe residually we have around about $25,000 but I'll get the specifics
And
back
that's
to
to
council.
many different projects. that
Or
might-
any events
yeah.
that might pop up,
Yeah,
community-driven events
Yeah.
that are outdoor, but there is an opportunity through a budget review process to allocate additional funding to this budget.
okay. So you could potentially double the amount. Yeah, you can.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, look, I think that was an important point to make because I don't think councillor Solomon is putting through these budget bids lightly. He's trying to put the information that he's got to a budget bid in this particular form. We've got the information from staff, which is very handy to have. But the opportunity there to, when we actually get through the scoping stage, which we're not there yet, I don't believe, in this space. The scoping stage can look at what budget allocations there. If we're short or if we're over, we can work through that. And this, I think the way it's going will be a more community-led sort of event anyway, with the way it's actually being set up. The fact that there is a budget for community pop-up events, which, noting, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but all the other events are budgeted for through a different line of budgeting. This is $25,000 for anything that might pop up. In my understanding of this, whatever happens with a Christmas parade, should one go ahead, I see the merit in being able to assist in this, but not having anything in there, especially with a community-driven interest item like this, I think that would be sort of, yeah, it's not a very good look, in my opinion. It's the same reason I voted for the decorations on Murray Street. It's the same theme that we're listening to. So yeah, look, I'll support this, and the difference in pricing, the scoping and everything, we acknowledge that will come out of all this. So yeah, I'm happy to support it.
Go to councillor Kosh, you want to speak? Yes, certainly.
So this funding is quarantined specifically for road closure and advertising, nothing else. Is that
Well,
right?
I think Mr Barrett has said that were 2019 figures.
Yes. yeah.
So, and then we talked about the activation budget of $25,000, which is for outdoor events that might pop up during the year, which is a capacity of a contingency, you could call it a contingency of 25,000. So, yeah, we're not quite sure how much current day road closures cost. 219, absolutely. I think councillor Solomon is on the money there. So we need to understand what the today's cost.
But
would be.
this is only, we're only talking about road closures and advertising, nothing else. Yeah,
Yeah, that's what this says.
okay,
That's what this says.
okay, thank you.
Councillor Lorna?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm in support of this motion as well. I think councillor Solomon's done quite a good job with the resources he has to come up with a figure in regards to this. It is something that the community really wants. I was also there on the first meeting in February, having a chat with everybody about what's going on and what the town is actually lacking. How I see this motion sitting is councillor Solomon's wanting to put something on the table. We've got to need to have that fund set aside so the staff can do their research and actually make something happen. If we sit back and we do nothing, nothing's going to happen again. We're going to be reaching out to businesses around the area, which will get support from them as well going forward. So I don't see why we wouldn't be doing this.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Sample.
Thank you, Mayor Karen. To the CEO, who owns Murray Street?
Actually goes to me.
Sorry,
The question comes to me.
okay, who owns Murray Street?
We do.
That's right. So we're charging ourselves to use their street. And also object to the point here, councillor Sol, I agree that we have to have something done better than we have in the last 4 or 5 years. But on the bottom of Councillor Solomon's notes here, this is not to be confused in any way with Christmas street parties similar to those that were held by the town of Gawler Council prior to 2010. Well, I'm not sure where he was, but they were the most successful Christmas street parties ever held. And they were done and organised by service clubs of this town, which are very, very valuable to this town because they're involved a lot. But I'm like Councillor Kosh, it feels the same way. We're going to charge ourselves to shut our own street. I attended at Tanunda, a very, very busy main street. And I said to Bim Lange, the mayor, you know, gee, it's costing a lot here. He said, no, we've just got the service club who have got authority to be on the closure and everything, the whole lot.
Yep.
Because they own that main street. We own this main street, but it's going to cost us. Doesn't make any sense.
Thank you. I think I'm going to go back to you, Councillor Solomon. You can wrap up the debate. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you everyone for your comments. I certainly understand Councillor Samuel's frustration, but unfortunately, yeah, these things do cost money, and if we want to have this parade, then it is going to cost us to close the street. Traffic diversion does cost money. In regard to the figure which has come out, I thank other members for their input there. Though this has been an attempt to get this figure right. 2 rounds of questions on notice were asked about this. There was a discussion, there's discussions which occurred about these questions which were asked in sessions, training sessions about preparing these items. And in those sessions, I was advised that when you put up a budget, it is scrutinised to a degree by staff. And if it's inaccurate, they can amend it when it's put up as a proposal. So I just needed a rough figure. I sought that rough figure on 2 occasions via questions on notice, and I have trusted that that figure that is delivered is accurately reflective of the question which was asked, and I continue to trust that that's the case. But yes, there is really broad community support for this. It is amazing to see that kind of support getting behind something, and our job as a council should really be to empower community, because where there are things that people want and they are leading, we should support that natural growth, and that's how we get things done as a council. We don't have the money to go out and do everything ourselves. That's not our role. What our role is to empower community where there is that capacity. So I thank members for this, and I hope you vote for the motion.
The debate is closed. I'm going to put that motion. All those in favour, please raise your hands. All those against? It is carried. Thank you. So now it is Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. I mean, this one, I had a conversation with Andrew Goodsell, and it went for 38 minutes. So I'm going to try to wrap that up. I think I did the same with Henry about this particular project. Now, I guess what I want to make clear and ensure not to confuse members, this is a standalone aspirational plan that is to be ideally developed or have a lot of buy-in from community stakeholders that understand private business, that understand what the town would benefit from, and grouping of business, et cetera, et cetera. It is different to the growth framework that was referenced previously, and I verified that today with Andrew Goodsell. The reason I am saying this is paramount in moving forward is we all know what's going on in the region. We understand the population growth, the conversations that are leading towards that. This sort of strategy, this sort of plan positions us on an economic level to be able to capitalise on the investments that are to come to this region. I am a little bit, I guess, worried that we might be missing out on opportunities because there's a language that we're unable to speak. With all due respect, you know, councils have their language and they speak it very well. But I also pair this together with an economic development officer, which staff have, and Henry's put forward. I see the merit in this sort of plan being led and driven by an economic development officer in partnership with stakeholders and the RDA and Gawler Business Development Group to really get to the bottom of what we have in our 42 square kilometres here in the town of Gawler and what aspirationally we want. I mean, I use an example of, imagine if we had an investor that came in and said, hey, we noticed you've just had some accommodation built in your main street. Are you open to some more accommodation investment? Imagine being able to hold them a document, hand them a document and say, yes, and this is what we've earmarked as an aspiration goal to have an accommodation precinct, and how that would work for our, I guess, infrastructure growth framework, and really work parallel with those documents that I know staff are working really hard on moving forward. So I know this is really hard to unpack, but it positions us so that we're not having the conversations we've been having with the RDA about, hey, you're leaving us behind. It's telling them what we're open for business for and what we want to see happen in our town. And we want them to go to market along with our economic development manager to see how that happens. The teasing out of the nitty gritty, you know, that comes out of these discussions. Like, I use an example, this is purely an example only, but imagine if we had a main street that focuses on retail, hospitality, cafes, all that sort of stuff. How do we promote that? Do we offer the building owners a bit of rate relief for the first 3 years if they can net a cafe owner to operate out of their main street business? You know, those are the sorts of conversations that I think we need to be having to position ourselves in such a way that leverages population growth. Don't be scared of it. Let's have a think on how this works and position ourselves so that when we are talking to state government representatives about where our train line stops, what does that look like when we talk about our zonings as an aspirational point of view, and where do we want our residents areas? We talk about the Vidoulas site, for example, about what's going on there. A bulky goods comes in and we're in those discussions now. Imagine if we had a plan that talked about, yeah, look, we like the idea of an employment zone, but bulky goods doesn't work in that area. Again, example only. But we would facilitate maybe independent living, aged care, because that's residential spec. However, it's looked after by the aged care provider. So it's no cost necessarily to council to look after roads and footpaths. Again, all these are just examples. Nothing I'm saying that's what we're going to do, to be clear, but it's opening up the conversation. So that's my pitch, really condensed.
Yeah. We can't stop a proponent-led code amendment. It's a state government driven process, so they can do it anywhere they like. And there's a defined process, and we're just a referral agency. So, you know, we can't control where people want to do code amendments. So there's that. I'm going to ask Andrew Goodsell just to articulate the conversation that you had with Nathan today, just for the benefit of members. Thank you.
Thank you for the chair. Pardon me. Yes, we did spend 38 minutes trying to unpack what it was and what it wasn't. I think it's fair to say. The way I'd condense my response would be, I don't think it's 2046. That we talked about before is basically a population model that talks about growth within and outside the LGA, what that functional impact is in terms of the rail corridor, road networks, housing needs, social community infrastructure, you know, childcare centres and the like, and what that looks like in terms of big picture for the town of Gawler. I think, my interpretation, I think, if I got it right, of what the Deputy Mayor said, is that this is a think tank group, which would be a group of selected, yes, business interests.
Who selects them?
That bit we didn't work out.
Who selects them?
Council.
Council, but Right, I see.
So I think it's a think tank group. I won't use the word Shark Tank, but it's kind of a group that pitches ideas and concepts as to, we think these are the opportunities that council should develop as an economic initiative. It might pick up specific sites, might be the CBD. It might have some parallels with a project that was done in Newcastle called Renew Newcastle, where they looked at all the empty shops there.
Where
with
they
the
put the right
activation.
light rail in and they closed down the rail line.
Well, in
That one,
the case of Newcastle,
it was a failure.
the Newcastle example looked at actually arts and culture businesses being given rent-free access for a month to get them to establish in the town. That was one example. And that Renew model has been used across parts of Australia. I think it probably isn't going to need to have 2,500 people engaging with it. It's a question of what it is and what it isn't. But what I think it is perhaps an advocacy brochure of things that council might want to consider and test further. And it could be a good input via the Economic Development Officer of what would go into 2046, or it could be part of the review of 2030 plus, for example. There's a whole lot of different ways of looking at it, and whether our existing advocacy is sufficiently targeted or whether it needs to be tweaked and done differently. That's how I read it.
Right, okay,
That wasn't a very condensed version, but that's the best I could come up with.
okay. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Solomon? Yeah,
So yeah, I guess, are there any examples of this, existing examples of this in other council areas?
in South Australia.
Across Australia generally?
Well, I think Andrew just mentioned Newcastle, Renew Newcastle. And I've been to Newcastle and I'm not sure that it worked, quite frankly. Yeah.
Well, I'm happy to refine that to South Australia if that helps.
I don't know. I beg your pardon?
Sorry, through you, Mayor. What's a section 30 talking about with Ryan Viney at that? For zoning, through you, Mayor.
Okay,
Under the old planning system, the Planning Act, there was a requirement for council every number of years to review its development plan relative to the state government planning strategy.
you mean strategic directions, a directions
That-
report?
Yes, that's another description to it. Yes, strategic direction report. And that's the section 30 report. So every 3 or 4 or 5 years, council will do that analysis to see how the zoning needed to change relative to the 30-year plan and relative to, community needs and otherwise.
Okay. All right, we're going to bring this together. I'm not aware of having a think tank. There was a think tank in Prospect. They got rid of their commercial traders group, and they brought in a think tank, and they were selected specifically for their skills, and then they advised council. So yes, Prospect has used this issue. The issue I have is that it's an exclusive group, and people will apply to be on this think tank. And I think we need to be very careful that they have a community representative, because all boards, all focus groups in government now have community representatives. And I think that needs to be instilled in any group that is developer driven. So if it's developers, if it's business, if it's, RDA, it really needs to be important that council doesn't lose control of we are community representatives. We know our community better than anyone. And I think that, yeah, we need to be really careful that it's not too exclusive. And also people who live in Gawler I would like to think that some of those people would actually live in Gawler, not live outside of Gawler. So we'll see where that goes. So we've got a seconder. You haven't spoken to it yet? You'd like to speak?
I was cut off, yeah. Thank you, Mayor.
I didn't cut you off.
Oh, no,
actually.
I didn't accuse anyone in particular of cutting me off. I just didn't get to speak after my question. Then that's no one's fault. I would want to speak to, and I think maybe the think tank terminology has maybe been unintentionally run with a bit too much in the last couple of minutes. I think there's certain things, and there's nothing wrong with outlining the way that the strategic vision which council has for certain areas, and I think that's what this really aims to do. It's not to have some illegal on the code there, proponent these code amendments, and I don't think it has done that anywhere else it's been used. I don't think there's anything wrong. In fact, I think there was a comment made about who controls it. I think actually determining what the council's strategic vision is for particular areas is actually beneficial, because it does allow us to have more control over these things. You look at recent developments. I'll use the recent development on the main road as an example. There's been some conversation about, well, there's other places in Gawler where you can actually choose to put an employment zone. And there's been a response from the proponents saying, oh, yeah, where would that be? And so I think having some vision around these kind of things will be very helpful. And from my understanding, that's exactly what this aims to do, and that would fall into that economic development portfolio, which we've really been talking about quite a lot recently. So I'll just wait for that motion.
Any other discussion? Not some cost, but
Look, unfortunately, I won't be able to support this motion. It's not clear enough to me what it will do. I'm just concerned about the validity of what's, we've got the status of the conversations. I don't know what that group would come up with. I think council already doing this. We spent a lot of money on town centre planning a couple of years ago, and we actually looked at Williston, the centre of town, and southern parts. So we've already done that already. And that was a big activity and a lot of community input. I think the community has input already in strategically where we go. So I just think this is doubling up. I'm concerned about if it's, how do we actually choose the people who go onto this group? Concerned about that. Yeah, and again, just think about what's the status of their recommendations, for example. It might be the council completely thinks it may not be appropriate, and then all of a sudden the group says, well, why would bother? So unfortunately, there's not enough detail I'm looking there in my keep actually doing this already. So I'm not disappointed. Thank you.
Thanks, Mayor. Just firstly, question, this proposed group, would they be working to create this plan and then look at it if there's any amendments needed, or is it more of a this group exists and developers or businesses keep going back to this group about creating the plan?
Well, if you look at the preamble, it says an overall aspiration plan that clearly identifies the zones wanted in the 42 square kilometres that the town will reside in. This plan would be developed by a working group, and this bid is subject to a future motion to reach the target for the working group establishment.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay. In principle, I like the idea. It reminds me a lot of the existing Gawler Town Centre design framework, which was created in 2016. My issue with it is in the Town Centre design framework, there's a lot of great stuff, but we're not following a lot of it. Like there's a lot of outcomes to be done. So my concern is that the plan to make a plan argument, and it is, okay, if we're going to spend this money to create this plan, how are we actually going to be kept accountable to follow it when I think we could be doing more to follow our existing plans? That's my concern at the moment. So I think it's in principle a really good idea. But I think that we've got some work in our current plans, which I think maybe we should turn our attention to before sprouting out.
And I think if the economic development position gets up, they're responsible for high level thinking, not looking after a think tank. I think they could get easily bogged down into tasks. And if that happens, that position will fail miserably. It has to be high level. So I actually quite like the idea of the economic development manager. But yeah, so we'll see where the further discussion goes. I saw Councillor Hennessy and then Councillor Davies.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, this one has left me scratching my head, and again, I agree with Councillor White. I don't think I've got a really good grasp. I know there's lots of documents around existing. I'm looking at the Gawler Invest document that's we put out to the public. That's only a few years old as well. I actually think I would be more in support of this if we had again a motion on those and a staff report back, so we could understand where it sits. I like using expertise from our community, but I just don't feel that there's enough information here for me to be able to support this in a budget situation where we are going to not be able to approve everything. It comes down to, you know, where do we want to spend our money? Yet another plan that I can't see where it sits with all the other strategic plans and the documents we already have existing. So I might be able to support this. Councillor Davies.
Yeah, look, I mean, I think, well, I mean, myself and Councillor Shanks, Deputy Mayor Shanks, had the same experience in the last term of getting, starting up the Climate Emergency Action Plan Working Group and getting a lot of great expertise and community knowledge and all of that, and sort of coming away with a positive thinking about working groups. I feel like we've had a very doomsday version of working groups where they're mentioned, you know, as far as this debate, but I think it's not necessarily a new concept to have a working group. It's not a, you know, I mean, obviously there's no detailed plan of exactly, you know, a constitution for the working group and that kind of thing, but that's not what you submit in a budget proposal. So, you know, the details of that, I'm sure we can work through, but yeah, look, I mean, it has taken me a while to get an understanding of this motion, fully, but yeah, I do think there's, I think vision can be used to mean multiple things, and you can say, well, let's have a vision on this, and you say, well, council already has a vision statement. Look, we love 5 things. We love community, service, diligence, you know, and it's like, well, that's a statement, but it's not. I think when we're talking about a vision here, we're talking about very much more specifically, you know, forward thinking and ways to encourage, you know, businesses to take up offers that will help our meetings and all this kind of thing. And I think that seems quite valuable. So yeah, I'm happy to support it.
Any other discussion? If not, Councillor Warner.
Thank you, Mayor. I've also been trying to go through this motion and that, trying to work out what it actually is entailing. In essence, I think it's a great thing to bring the community in and now to help determine the direction a little bit more outside views coming into there, coming into Gawler. However, at this point in time where we're sitting with our budgets at the moment, I'm not spending 20 grand or something at this particular point in time. I'm happy to look at that in the future, but I'll have a few other things to get resolved first before we make that commitment. Thank you.
I'm going to hand over to you, Deputy Mayor, to wrap up the debate. Thank you very much.
Firstly, thank you, members. I think there's some great input from every single member on this one. Just a couple of points that I just want to touch on here.
Firstly, I believe we're falling a little bit behind in the economic development space, and that is now ratified by the economic development manager being put forward. That is ratified by economic development management strategy and by resolve and next to no actions followed through because the resourcing is not there. What I see here and what I'm trying to do is offer a vision, a strategic vision that results in real investment, real action, boots on the ground. Councillor Davies is absolutely right. We talk about the community plan and the visions and, you know, how this community, et cetera, et cetera. What does that mean? How do we achieve that? What are we wanting in our town to actually abide by those pillars that we will support to move forward? Right now, the population growth that is about to happen to the north, about to happen right now. They're all a little bit intimidated by this is the sort of investment that we need to do. And with all due respect, it can't be local government spend. It just can't. It needs to be having the input of those stakeholders that we have in this town, the knowledge that we have in this town, the investors we have in this town, buying in to understand the call of 42 square kilometres. And the reason that's so, we touched on the town centre framework. No argument there. There is some great pickups there and work we need to catch up on. We need to grab the great things that are still relevant because, again, we touched on the fact that these are 5 years old and this is a very fast moving situation here. If we pick up the good points from those great strategic documents that have good actions that will result in good outcomes, absolutely, let's use that. Let's not reinvent the wheel. But then also, what do we do behind the ministry? What happens there? What do we do behind that street? Where do we want aged care? Where do we want the childcare facilities that Andrew's plan is going to touch on, where we need as the population grows? How is that going to work in regards to traffic management, in regards to if development is going to happen on a bulky goods store here, there, everywhere? Do we set up a position where Tibber Road has a bulky goods activation in our plan to promote the north driving, not the main street of Coolpark, because we know how to just that gets. Use state government highways to do your one-stop shop sort of stuff and then get moving on. Whatever it is, we tease all that out and we use the knowledge of the people that actually have these businesses, own these properties, and we figure it out. Now, working group, I don't want people to be intimidated by this just being a closed net club, because as Councillor Davies pointed out, a climate emergency action plan was put out publicly and we've got some great members. And from that, we've got a great strategy that has boots on ground action that we are already benefiting. Already, think about the LED light projects, think about what we're thinking about, and when we come into budget process and the lens we're now looking through. Imagine this as a lens that informs our opportunity as a regional player, as a regional hub, because that's what we promote ourselves out as, and we have been supporting the North for a very long time, and that's capitalising.
The debate is closed. I'm going to put that motion. All those in favour, please raise your hands. All those against? It is lost. Thank you. Now, Shadeside. Deputy Mayor, I think this is yours as well. Sorry, Nathan. You did really well. You really nailed that. I was very impressed.
All right. Anyway, thank you. Members, this is more of the fundamental work that we've been doing throughout the town already. And it is more of that. It is being very appreciated through the families of the town of Coolpark having these shade sales over our open spaces. The more, it's a bit of catch-22 because the more service levels we provide like this, the more expectations come through like this. As it was teased out in our last budget deliberations, there isn't actually a shade sale allowance this year. I think that would be the first time in about three years or something like that, where we're actually not investing in that shade over our open space. I know saddened to miss the inclusive play the day that was on Sunday. It was well received by young families, and this shade structure setup is providing that service level that I think our communities come to expect, which is something I think we can be very proud of. And this is just allowing that to be able to roll out and keep on rolling out for our open space. Don't forget, we're only 2 square kilometres. There's only going to be so many playgrounds that we're going to be shading. So eventually we will finish. But we're not there. So hopefully I can get the support. This figure is purely based on what these things cost previously.
Thank you. Do I ask for a second? Councillor Light, please just speak it all.
Yeah, thanks, Ben. No, I agree with in principle with everything that you may have said. I think in the way that playgrounds have now developed, the initiatives that we are looking at in the future now is very, very exciting. I think this is just one of those items that potentially sits there, doesn't get noticed too much, but does mean a lot for families, particularly of young children, but really everyone. I think it's important that we need to be promoting not only, I guess, good play, but of course some smart safety. And I think, yeah, I would say, to go to my original point, it's one of those things that if they're not there, you notice it, but if they are there, you don't notice it. But when they are there, they are a great benefit to the community. So happy to support this motion. Only question I have is, how exactly is it determined if this motion passes which playground?
I'll refer to Wendy Young. Thank you, Wendy.
Through you, Mayor Karen. So I would suggest that we're doing our playground strategy at the moment. As part of that, we're already all of our playgrounds and looking at what they do and don't have. Now that will be a clear set of recommendations around which parts need shade and we can find which parts that.
Thank you. Also, I have open it up for discussion. You've got your hand up, Councillor Hennessy.
Thank you, Mayor. And I'd like to wait until we get that audit report. I think, while I agree, it's great that we're doing some fabulous things with our playgrounds and I know it's well received in the community. I think we have a duty to also look at where we also need to spend money. And we've got various parts of the community talking to us about footpaths, potholes, and a whole range of things. I feel uncomfortable about allocating $50,000 to simply shade sales, but we're going to have to struggle to make sure that we've got sufficient money to keep the footpaths going for safety's sake and just to ensure that, because it's still not with every street with a sealed footpath yet. So it's just a matter of balance, and I don't think at this point, maybe when they come back with the audit of our playgrounds, we can amend it in the future, look at some of that, you know, where we need to assign money, but at the moment, yeah, I don't think I can support this.
Councillor Davies and then Councillor Koch.
Yeah, I mean, obviously that we always have to have a good balance of things. That said, footpaths and roads are the bulk of our spending every year. And if we stop all capital expenditure for the next 15 years and focus it all on trying to get our footpath, I think we still want to have sealed footpaths on all of our roads. So, you know, that's
I think we're 30 years behind.
I think we're 30 years behind. So obviously that's, you know, definitely something that we should look at. But I think this is the kind of thing that is also important infrastructure. You know, just this kind of community infrastructure means whether or not a playground is usable on certain times of the year, essentially. You know, and so yeah, shade, you know, shade, benches, trees. This is all a type of infrastructure, just like roads and footpaths. And if you just have roads and footpaths, you know, I've been to the United States and seen a lot of roads with no, with no trees or benches or community infrastructure, but there's a lot of roads, a lot of, you know, service stations. And I think, you know, yeah, this is an important part of the balance, so I'm happy to support it.
Councillor Koch.
Yeah, look, I'm happy to support this. I think from memory, we did always have the allocation of shade structures, and thanks, Deputy Mayor, for picking that up, I didn't pick it up. It's important that we do have show over playgrounds, for example, an item on the news tonight, Hugh Jackman talking about Villanova, and he said, I think it's 6, Villanova taking off his face. So it's real, it's a real issue, and we need to put in, making the playgrounds as safe as possible, especially for our children who have quite vulnerable skin. So, and it allows those playgrounds to be used through the summer months. So, now with the footpaths, I've seen the actual spreadsheet, and there's some areas, like my area, it's 30 years away. So that's the way it is. So it's, you know, people spend all the money on footpaths and you know it.
I think it reflects that people didn't walk around, and I also, with all due respect to the men in the room, women didn't have a voice in council, and women were the ones that pushed the pushes around, and we didn't have a voice. And now that is changing because men are starting to push pushes around, and grandparents are going to playgrounds, and it's the whole thing's changed. And so now playgrounds, play spaces, and having shade is exceptionally important.
I actually don't agree with that, but that's
It's just an opinion.
just your opinion. For example, in the area where I live, there's no footpath, there's obviously an input footpath in, just the way it is. But now we are actually getting to putting footpath. But anyway, you know, I'm support this.
Thank you.
As this motion says, and I agree with everything's being said, we've got to be protected, but we do that when we've got plenty of money. And this is another 50 grand. So the whole point about it is that it says shade cloth over playground. Which playground? Sorry. Okay, well, maybe it's one up at Chemical Grove because an ex-employee of the council has been saying, I don't believe it. I'm now retired and I never see anybody playing in the playground. And I think I'm a little bit concerned that if we're going to start spending money on these things before there's other things that are very important in our community, you know, who comes up with the idea, as I see it a little bit later on, there's a play space in Reed Park or something.
Yes, that's it.
Where's Reed Park?
Reed.
Is that around where the car?
Paternoster Road, you know where Paternoster Road is?
I'm not sure.
It's quite, it's around in Gore River and just up on the hill, and Paternoster Road runs parallel with bypass.
Okay.
And that's been funded by a local member.
Because if it's to go on all of the, if that 50 grand is going to cover a whole lot to go on those parks that haven't got shades on them, I'll totally support it, but I don't know which shade it's going to be put over, so maybe I'll be a little bit more understanding.
Just on Chemical Grove, I think that you raised that. Now, that's an insurance claim, and that if you'd like to provide an update, because I think it is timely, and I think I'm glad you raised it, Councillor Seville, but when you'd like to provide an update on Chemical Grove and the insurance claim?
Yep, through you, Ms. Garrett. So we've received 4 quotes for the insurance claim. It is, there's a shade cell that has to be repaired. That has to be replaced. The main piece of play equipment also has to be replaced, but we also have to remove the footings, make the site safe. It's a 4-month lead time for the play equipment to come back. That's just what the market is at the moment. So we want to open up the face-to-face so that it hasn't got any bunching in it for that 4 months. To say combined cost and all that is considerable, and it has gone off to the insurance claim. We had accepted the quotes, so it is all about to happen.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for that update. That was much appreciated. Any other discussion, Councillor Solomon?
Just a quick question I might speak to about why was there no budget like there previously wasn't, even below the line item for shade sale?
I'll ask Wendy to answer that question. So through you, Mayor Karen. So there was a budget bid initially in the original bids put forward in keeping with what had been going in historically over the last 3 years. However, on the review of the budget bid and the definition of the budget situation, we did sharpen our pencil to look at what, is really required. And here we have invested heavily. So we've got 3 shade sales going up this year. Over the last 18 months prior to that, we've got 2 shade sales, we've got 4 playgrounds. So we have done a number of shade sales recently. I guess we consider that this is one that could grow below our line for a year. And I guess in a broader context, you'll see that there isn't any playground initiative for the construction of a playground or playground renewal in this budget. That's because we have got the ready playground investment, and so the construction of that will be happening next financial year, and that's a big project to be delivering. So instead what we've done is just look at doing the design and consultation for Princess Street, or for Princess Street playground renewal, that to then be delivered in 24-25. So that then likely would have a shade sale budget compared to that in the 24-25 budget. Does that answer your question? Thank you, Wendy. Okay, any other discussion? You should speak.
Thank you. Now I'll make it quick. Yes, I think coming to this, I was a little bit skeptical about the financing and the obviously the lack of clarity around it, but I thank all the members for making it obvious what this is about, and for letting you giving those updates, because I now see that this is something which is really important to support our shade sales have. So our playgrounds have those shade sales over them, and I was saying to someone just the other day, it is great to see so many families spending time at playgrounds here in Gore, and it's something which is I think speaks to our unique sense of community, that you do see our playgrounds full all the time, which you might not see in some of our southern neighbours councils. So I really think this is a good investment.
Thank you. Might hand over to you, Deputy Mayor, to wrap up the debate.
Once again, thank you, members. I think some of the points raised are definitely valid, but just to put some context around it. So this budget, this particular budget, is the way it sits right now, we've got $525,000 dedicated to the new footpath program and new curb and gutter program. We do need to provide a balance, and this is a 10% of that figure, which I think is a good balance. I do like the strategic approach by staff to see the opportunity of the Reed Street playground, because regardless, people are going to look at that and think that was a council funded project, which actually works in our favour, don't get me wrong. But that said, we have good momentum in the shade sales space. I like the idea of keeping that momentum. And once again, we will get to a point where we have our open spaces at a level that is consistent throughout, missing that opportunity to keep that momentum, understanding the understanding nature of staff in delivering shade sales is right. Like it's right here, right now. So I want to be able to keep that. I want the same designs to roll out. I want some consistency. I don't want to miss a year or a year and a half to then come to, oh, actually we've got a better design, or actually we're going to do something differently, or actually they're more expensive now. Now, I just want to keep going because it is a great initiative. It's been well received. And as Councillor Bosch rightly pointed out, the safety concerns, melanoma, sun damage, all those things come into play. I probably should have declared an interest in this one because I've got 2 young kids that will be using these sorts of facilities. But as a family, as a young family, I certainly know that pushes around the brand and notices when there is no certainly that takes into the playground and realises, hang on, stuff up here because I didn't bring some change. That is the sort of stuff that I think we should be promoting local to every open space, and see equal use around the lower open spaces instead of focusing on town centre. Let's branch out, let's provide that community throughout. So I hope it can get support because I think this is a well balanced side.
The debate is closed. I'm going to put that to the vote, all those in favour, please raise your hands. All those against, it is carried. Thank you. Now, Deputy Mayor, I think it's over to you again.
Strategically, at 42 would have been all that with me. Look, this one is almost similar vein. I did notice this was below the line, which I saw it a little bit disappointing because I know we need to make some decisions. I get that. And you saw some of my other budget bids that have even moved, which, you know, with $200,000 worth of budget bids that I have said, you know, we're not the right thing. This particular one, I think is really, really important in ensuring that we are shovel ready to position ourselves to the federal and state government sports and rec grants that flow through. I mean, this is business council have done and keeping and doing. This isn't my own bid, by the way, either. This was a start bid that went below the line that I'm resurrecting because probably to align with the staff member that put it forward, the investment in this master plan and the ability to be able to leverage that master plan to get grants available is now. We're so far behind in our sporting facilities in this league, in this area. It's not money. Like we need to catch back up. We're doing this master plan in Essex Park and we're positioning ourselves well there. This master plan isn't a quick process. We need to run through, we need to be working collaboratively with the users of the space, and we need to develop a vision of the area to be able to position ourselves for future budgets to come to be able to be ready when what happens. This is the start of a 10-year process, realistically. So I think starting that now, it makes great sense. And it also aligns with our sport rec vision, and in essence, we do sort of preach it out of the chain, which I think is a good thing. This is putting our money where our mouth is. This work doesn't get cheaper along the way there.
Do I have a second, Councillor Solomon, you wish to speak?
Thank you, Mayor. I largely agree with Deputy Mayor Shanks. We look, you know, to the north of us and we see where the ending of many councils in terms of sporting precincts and the work that's been done up there. We are building a plan in the region, the area, some of the leagues that Councillor Shanks said. And I think that it's really important that as state governments come out with these grant opportunities, that we are able to make the most of them. We've already seen that in this recent year, there has been a lot of investment in those sort of facilities, and we really want to make the most of that while it lasts. So I think this is a really good, this would be a good investment. I understand that, you know, things aren't going to be tight. We're going to need to make some tough decisions, and they're not going to be made at this meeting, but we will have to make those. But I do recall something which was said, important to take out of context, but there are certain things that if we don't do now, will be harder to do in the future. And I perceive this as being one of those things that it's been below the line for a couple of budgets now, to my knowledge. And it's something that that in my view we really need to do, because if we don't do it now, we miss those opportunities, and those opportunities won't come back, and we will spend more money doing this in the future when we get everybody needs upgrade. This facility, having that master plan is really, really important.
Discussion? Any discussion, Councillor Watt?
Thanks, Mayor. Just a question through you. Has there been any consultation with the Williston football and netball clubs? Because I thought there was an existing plan that the clubs had input in. So I'm just unsure whether council had consulted with the sporting.
Thank you for that question. I'll go over to Mr. Barrett.
Through the chair, yes, Council's Manager of Strategy, Bryce Whitney, met with the Association of the Club, Wilson Footy Club, and other representatives from the precinct couple of weeks ago, to discuss this master plan opportunity, that is. And it's been also skewed in that direction by others at the meeting to get the collective users of the precinct involved in the planning exercise. My understanding, just a lot from the records about an existing plan, that was just a mud map from the Williston Football Club regarding potential locations for improvements to facilities to meet their future needs, but it wasn't a full master plan that involved all of the precinct users. It was a site plan, if you like, from the Williston Football Club's perspective. Obviously, that'll be used as part of the consultation for an overall master plan.
So, Mr. Barrett, the users are?
So the users are, and I might miss one or two, however, there's the Water Scout group, there is the 608 Squadron, there is the BMX Club, the Dog Obedience is in there as well, the Williston Football, which includes netball as well, and cricket as well. I think that's all of them in that.
I think that's it. Yeah, there's probably quite a number. Sorry.
Thanks, Mayor. Does that include, so just for context, does that include the whole site, so that like the BMX park?
Yes.
That's also included in
So
the.
you go in, you go in, you know, where the scout hall is?
Yep.
You go start from there, you go up the hill.
Yep.
And you incorporate that play space, the pump track, the BMX, dog obedience, netball, football, cricket, and all of that area that takes you across to Kelly Road.
Yes.
Someone's road.
Yes, okay. So just to, thank you for that, Mr. Barrett. So just to reiterate, there's been the footy club's done work in a sort of mud map type setting. Long term, but this is going to be a detailed map plan. Similar to the Essex Park, it might just because the context.
Probably not as big.
No,
Not as many users, not as expensive.
Yeah.
However, still, a master plan that I think that is part of the missing link.
Yeah, that sort of detail, I guess, with what we've done with Essex, but okay. Thank you.
Thank you. I can see your hand up, Councillor Norman. You have the floor.
Just a question, is the Air League involved up there as well?
Yes, the 608 Squadron, that's part of the user group.
Yeah.
So they're up on Bull River Road.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
what I was talking
Yeah.
about. That wants to be incorporated into this as well, part of it.
Yes.
Thank you.
Councillor Hennessy, you've got your hand up. Yes, thank you. Mick. Could I ask to you, please, the reasons that the staff put this underneath the line? I need to understand, I understand how useful it is, I understand that we need to be ready, but I'd like to hear why staff under those circumstances put it below the line. Thank you, Mr. Barrett.
So through the chair, it was under the scrutiny of the budget and the budget pressures that council is facing in the new financial year. We put this on the local line, noting that we are currently in the process of developing on much of the change room design for the more central precinct. And the council's appetite was to potentially have a funding application for that precinct in the next round of the Office for Record Sport Races Community Infrastructure Grants. So that was our priority over the next 12 months. We could then look at the Equity Master Plan in the 24 financial year if required. However, staff aren't very keen for this master plan to occur, but it was just because of budget constraints that we put it below the line.
I think that clarifies your question. Thank you. Councillor Davies, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, okay. I'm happy to support this. This is one that, you know, obviously it was moved below the line, but the reason it was above the line at the start and it's been in there is because it's clearly something that is important and we have to do. You know, not necessarily now, it could be next year, but I think this kind of thing, if we do it earlier, I think there's value in that. I think, you know, especially with these kinds of master plans where I think grant fundings and all this kind of thing can be a major part of it. I think there's value in putting this above the line. And that is, you know, to be clear, that's what we do as elected members is we get the recommendations from staff and we can say, well, I think this has some, you know, I think this is a priority to move forward, so I'm happy to do that.
Any other discussion? If not, Deputy Mayor, you can close the debate. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I guess, firstly, again, thanks for the debate. As elected members, we meet with community members, community groups, sporting groups, and I guess my appetite for this became very clear when I met with the president of the Association of Crime and said, look, guys, what are you doing about your sporting facilities? We're talking a lot of pressure on the SANFL about your ability to provide rooms, change rooms as one. The ability to compete in this league. Now, we all know that we have very, very strong teams here in Gawler. We're very lucky in that, but we're quickly getting known as the ones that have the worst facilities. We've got our neighbours that are positioning themselves to host a gather round for the AFL once they finish some of their projects. They are able to leverage their planning, and they started this 6 years ago, but they're delivering on those plans as we speak, and they're able to position themselves well for that federal, state government, big money, the stuff that we could only dream of. And that all starts with this sort of strategic master plans. It's funny because this has exactly the same reasoning as the Gore 42, but it's easier to explain because it is a master plan talking about strategic direction, leveraging ourselves to be able to benefit from the opportunities that are out there and will be out there moving forward. I understand the sentiment around, we went through the scrutiny and budget process and we moved below the line because we're delivering on the Essex Park. I get that. However, with how far we are behind in the league, that doesn't stack up in the region. If we're going to compete in this league, if we're going to provide similar services, this will start from this. We don't have another year to sit on this. So that's why I put it forward. And absolutely, let's talk about savings and let's teasel that out when we get the auditors assessment when we come through. Because I've definitely got some savings for you, don't worry. And we're going to need some support to talk about one too. So anyway, this one I think leading for another year and it was a year behind on a 10-year behind that we already are. So yeah, I hope I can get some support.
Debate is closed. I'm going to put that motion. All those in favour, please raise your hands. All those against, it is carried. Right. So now I think we'll have a 10-minute break. We'll stretch our legs, go to the bathroom, etc. I'll never come back. You can have an instant coffee with me. A biscuit. Biscuit. You got your biscuit fry. Okay, we'll have a 10-minute break and we'll come back at 5 to 9. Okay, thank you everyone.
Final, where we have our final. But typically it's the one for the.
I'll get everyone to sit down now, and it's cracking onto the draft budget. What I plan to do. If everyone can take the seat, thank you. So what I plan to do is, in attachment 2, we have initiatives above the line, and I'm going to go sheet by sheet. I hope we've got all the same sheets. I'm just hoping we've all got the same sheets. I'm assuming we have, but I'm assuming we have. So I am on attachment 2 and I'm on page 18, Brian. So right at the beginning, I think that's the beginning. Have I got the beginning? Have I got that right? I think it's 18. That's the initiatives. So what we might do, I'll ask Sharon to just present this. Just one moment, Councillor Hennessy. I'm going to ask Sharon Perkins to just provide some overarching comments. Keep it brief, Sharon, and then we'll get stuck in. Okay. Thank you, Mayor. So just in relation, just from an update perspective, so with regard to the draft operating deficit as a result of the notices, motions on notice that were passed tonight, effectively from an operating perspective, that's actually increased the operating deficit to $1.637 million for the inclusion of the additional $20,000 for the support of the Christmas parade. That I would also point out that in effect that the draft budget also incorporates the impact of the 2 motions that were actually the 3 motions that were passed at the last council meeting. So that was in relation to for the increase in the electricity budget to consider for the green power, which was an additional $20,000, which was over and above what had already been incorporated in the draft budget. The extra $20,000 for as a result of the adoption or endorsement of the recommendation of the CCF committee meeting with regard to the Gawler activation budget. Plus also an extra $20,000 that I'll put into the capital program, so there's an additional $20,000 for the participatory budget motion that was put through from Councillor Davies at the last meeting. So those 3 items aren't listed on these sheets because they were actually considered as part of the last council meeting. So they're built into those numbers as well. So effectively taking into account the initiatives that are on attachment 2, plus the 3 positions or 3.5 FT positions, And no extra motions, and what we've actually decided tonight with regard to this, parade, that's what makes up that 1.637 million based on a rate revenue or CPI plus growth. From a capital perspective, so the capital budget has, as a result of tonight's decisions, has increased from 10.33 million up to 10.4 million rounded, so that from that perspective as well. So, so they're the two adjustments that are actually come through as a result of tonight's decision. Okay. And again, so obviously it's over to the chamber. So the purpose of this is to, I suppose, provide your support for the budget, so we can actually take it to the audit committee for their comment and feedback before we actually finalise the budget and annual business plan for consultation, which is planned for the next council meeting. Thank you very much, Sharon Perkins, Executive Manager, Finance and Corporate Governance. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go bit by bit. If you have something that you want to put below the line in, we test it. Do a motion. Happy to accept motions without notes. So I'm going to start on page 18. Is everyone with me with page 18? Everyone knows where I am? Yeah. Okay. So anything on this sheet? Yes. Getting there.
So P230819, boundary loan inquiry. 254,500. I'm trying to enter the number line.
So you're moving the motion?
Yes, thank you.
Do I have a seconder? Councillor Sample. Any discussion on that?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, look, unfortunately, I just don't believe we can afford taking a punt on something we don't understand what the overall cost is in regards to an outcome that again we don't fully understand. It is that hard line approach, absolutely. You can definitely debate that my personal connection or discomfort for this is playing a role, and I'm not going to argue, because this particular project, moving forward with it without understanding the next line of costs should we be successful. To me, it seems like betting on a horse without knowing the odds. In fact, if the horse is even running in the race. So this to me is a risk, and I don't see it having the full community support that I think it's been treated as. And I don't see it having full chamber support that it's being talked about. For a cost this large, there are so many questions that need to be answered before justifying this. And I believe a rate 1% through you, Mayor, if you wouldn't mind. What's the equivalent in money for 1%? Is it 137 grand is
So
equivalent?
that question is to me.
Yes, I yeah, through you, Mayor.
Through the mayor, it's 257,000. Thank you.
So this particular budget alone is equivalent to 1% rate increase. So yeah, look, I get it, but I just don't think we're there to be able to justify this sort of money to it. And I also know, as you go further through the budget, there's also boundary reform resourcing of about 100 grand as well.
No, it's not. It's below.
Oh, that's below the line. My apologies. Yeah, that's below the line. So
Okay, so we've got a mover, we've got a second. Thank you, Mayor. Discussion, Councillor Hennessy, and we're not going to spend too long on each item because we won't get through the night. So yes, Councillor Hennessy. I'm a little bit disappointed. We had this discussion at the council meeting. I think this needs to continue to go through. We aren't committed to spend this money. It sits in the budget, so that depending on what the next stage is, we have the money there. You know, if we need to, if we as a council make that decision. It's 1% of the budget. I think we should just leave it to go through. Councillor Gavin.
Yeah, look, I won't spend too long on it, obviously. But yeah, this isn't the same discussion as we had at the council meeting. I think, that was about it coming back, which, you know, potentially I might support, but it sort of became a proxy vote about the other stuff. But, I don't support a complete abolition of all of our boundary reform. It could be that it comes back, it's too expensive, and then we go, all right, well, Hewitt is, you know, for example, 10 times more expensive than anything else because it's an already developed area. Maybe we need to look at this. But most of the boundary reform proposal stuff is not going to be that expensive, and we're a long way along in the process at this point, several years into the process, trying to get a whole bunch of stuff of just like, you know, the Bivaringas and Everton Parks and all of this kind of thing sorted out as well. So I think even if you're against this, I think it would make more sense to actually look at what we've got in front of us, and if we do need to make compromises, we can do that, but you know, not just throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Thank you. There's no Councillor White.
Thanks, Mayor. Just a couple of questions quickly. When are we expected to hear back regarding the costing from the Boundaries Commission?
April, May.
Okay, so relatively soon. If the motion was moved, say it was moved below the line, and then we got the costings back and we wanted to proceed with that, if it was higher than the estimated cost, I'm just not quite sure the process to move it back above the line. Can we do that before?
Well, you need a revoking motion. So this motion is putting it below the line.
Yeah.
So let's focus on this motion. Okay. Yes, it will come back in April, May.
And if council decide they want to put it back above the line.
It will need a motion or notice for a revoking motion.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. If there's no, yes, Councillor Costello.
Yeah, I think we've had discussion. My view is that the community actually does support community boundary reform. That's quite evident. It's been strong for years and years and years. I've been here for almost 30 years in Galway and it's been the same. I think if this is an opportunity we need to seize, if we don't, we will lose out. We had the workshop the other night, and it's quite obvious that the Concordia, for example, will be part of Galway. This is an opportunity we need to seize. I think this is almost stopping boundary reform. I'm not happy with it, but not happy that this motion's been put up. So I'll be voting against it.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor, you can close the debate.
Yeah, look, I know boundary reform is such a subject. I live in Dalfield. So I don't mean to cause any offence. The fact is, where I sit right now, we can't afford this. That doesn't say we can't receive a quote. That doesn't say that next financial year we look at the budget position the way that it is. But right here, it's over $250,000 sitting here for an investigation that we don't know what would happen before. You have my support for boundary reform if we approach it a different way, but that's a different conversation. This is $250,000 that we don't know what domino effects that actually creates. So in the tight budget, where we've got a $1.6 million deficit, I look at these big ticket items and I go, what can be cut and why? Once again, no offence meant, absolutely. So that's why I'm going to motion here tonight to be, I guess, sensible, and this won't be the only one that I'm trying to move below the line either, by the way.
Okay, I'll put that motion. All those in favour of putting it below the line, please raise your hands. All those against? It is lost on the casting vote of the Mayor. Thank you. So we move on. Any other items on page 1? So I'm going over to page 19, turning it over. I'm on page 19. There's some that are funded through grant funding, so I suggest you leave them alone. Just a friendly suggestion. Yeah, so there are some that, any on this page? Okay, can I keep moving? Oh, yes.
Would I be able to ask some questions that could be taken on notice as we move along?
Yes,
Was that? okay?
absolutely, you can.
Yeah, great. Just regarding the second point, the electric vehicle transition and charging plan. If members were able to get a breakdown of what that plan would consist of and why it's required, that would be fantastic.
Thank you. That can be taken on notice. Who will do that? Thank you, David Barrett. Awesome work. Okay. Yeah, that's okay. I'm going to keep moving. You got some? You got one? Okay. Yeah. Which one are you looking at?
So the senior social and community planner to be put below the line. So I can speak to it.
Yeah.
Look, it's a new role. I'm still trying to learn about exactly what this role would be doing.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I just need to check. The motion was lost on the casting vote of the mayor. You need to actually add that, because otherwise it's not correct. And it was put aside, yeah, okay. All right, thank you. Thank you. I just needed to check that. Sorry, Nathan, keep going.
No, absolutely. All right. Cool. So yeah, so the senior social community planner. Look, I'm still trying to get my head around exactly what that does, but it comes down to dollars for me. For me, I'd rather spend $100,000 on a master plan for a sporting precinct and a shade sale over this particular role, especially on the back end of investing in an economic development officer. I see the merit in there, and for me, I have to choose. It's a hard call, and I see that there might be some future benefits, but this year, I don't think we can justify that role. So I'm moving that item below the line.
Do you have a second? Councillor Lorna, thank you. Can you speak at all?
Yes, I'm very much in agreement with Deputy Mayor Shanks there. This allows for people to start October 23, so we're going towards the end of this year, sort of thing. So I would be moving it below the line so we can start. And we will get in the new financial year, basically, the new budget.
I might hand over to the CEO just to explain the role.
Through the chair. So of the four positions that we're presenting, I certainly see them as a critical position. There are a number of gaps that we have in terms of capacity. We know that the community is stretched and suffering on a whole number of different levels that we wish to advocate for and progress initiatives. There's been some reporting in that respect. We presented the scope of the job description. We acknowledge it's extensive. So I'll just further impress that this is a critical role that will be desperate to fill.
Councillor Hennessy. Yes, thank you, Mayor. I also support it staying above the line. When I looked at those four positions, I thought it was the most important, and if I had to let one go, and this is directly with my interest in tourism, I wouldn't put the economic development officer in. I think that's the fourth of it. And then I would move through to the civil trainee and the immunisation officer. I think we definitely need to have a social and community planner. There's a lot that we haven't done, and that's reflected in some aspects in the way the budget's presented. There isn't a lot of social and community initiatives coming through because we haven't had the senior strategic level support to start to identify where our community needs strengthening. We keep talking about that we're a growth community. We're not dealing with some of the impacts that we need to identify quickly and put some services in. So I won't support this. I'm going to jump in, and I actually think that senior social and community planner, and I hear what Councillor Hennessy is saying about the lack of community and social issues in our budget, and I think that reflects a gap. a big gap. And I think the role description is way too big. However, I think that will be ironed out over time. However, I think that social and community planners are becoming more and more important in communities, and I think that this one is reasonably, I think it's very important, so I do support that. But anyway, over to you guys. Any other discussion? Okay, Deputy Mayor, you can close the debate.
Yeah, firstly, once again, thank you, members. I guess for me, the Economic Development Officer sits front and centre because, well, very basic from my name before about previous motions trying to be moved. But also I want to remind members that we have an economic development strategy that is around four or 5 years old that doesn't have any of those actions picked up and implemented. And that's what I see the benefit from the economic development officer. The senior social and community planner is a new term that I'm just listening to in this particular budget process. I understand the scope, but I'm still not quite there yet on the return on investment, because once we get this up, it's not a one-off payment. So I absolutely listening to Councillor Hennessy and Mayor Redmond's sentiment around it. I definitely don't argue with that. I just look at what we can afford and what I prioritise, and that's all I can speak to is what I prioritise in the budget process. And based on the experience of talking to community members and what people are wanting out there, I think we do some good space, do some good work in the space of community events and all this sort of stuff, but I definitely think there is room for improvement. No argument from you there. There's also room for improvement on, you know, that aid that we can provide for our community doing it right, you know, just all these things that will run under this umbrella. But that said, it's that timeline, and unfortunately, I've put forward and got the support for 100 grand, and this is the offset. So one of those bad choices.
The debate is closed. We'll put that motion. So don't ask the CEO to read out the motion.
That the senior social and community planner role be moved below the woman.
Thank you very much. So that's what we're voting on. All those in favour, please raise your hands. All those against? It's locked on the casting vote of the mayor. Thank you. If you can just add that. Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm over the page now. Did you have a question?
Sorry, thanks, Nick. Sorry, I just had a couple on this page and realised they were on this page. First of all, the second from the bottom, the immunisation program and development administration officer.
Yeah.
This might need to go on notice through you there, but if staff do have an answer now briefly, that would be great. I'm not quite, I wasn't aware that the council was doing this. I thought this would have been in state government's hands. What is this role actually? What is this role actually? What are the purpose of this role?
Well, we've also got grant funding of 40,000 that you'll notice to increase the part-time position to full-time, to increase the school immunisation program. So we get contracted to do that.
Right. So council actually gets contracted. I see. That makes sense. Okay. I think that actually answers my question, so thank you.
Okay.
The second question I have is just about the fourth item from the top, the tree management strategy.
Yeah.
It would be great to have a better understanding about the purpose of that. I've got nothing against planting more trees. I just think that 35,000 to develop a standalone tree management document. I just would like to, if we could, members could have a breakdown on.
Okay, that would be taken on notice.
Yeah,
thank you.
That would be great. Thank
Thank
you.
you very much. I'm going to go over the page now. Sorry, yeah, councillor Solomon, did you have something?
But just on that one, if I could ask a question, just in reference to
Thank
the
you.
item from the bottom on that last page, the economic development officer role.
Yeah.
So, liaison with, the RDA and the Board Business Development Group, just wondering who that currently sits with and what the changes are to the implementation of the economic development strategy.
Well, we're not delivering the economic development strategy or the tourism plans, huge gaps. We haven't been able to do it. I think we had a report come up through the CCS that actually stated that. And I think this role is to fill that gap. So currently it all sits with David Barrett, and there's only so many hours in the day for David. And I think that the reason why we're not delivering on these strategies is because we don't have the resources. So I'm a little bit with Deputy Mayor here. I actually think this is an important one. However, you may have a different view, Councillor Solomon, which is your right. Do you have any other questions?
No, I just want to clarify that, and obviously to the extent of nothing at the moment.
Okay, thank you very much. Right, I'm going to keep moving. I'm going to go over the page. Yes, Councillor Davies.
So a question about the first one here, heritage wall restoration. We heard during deputation that there are ways to get this done cheaper. So we have some clarification from the staff about why we're doing things the way that we are.
Thank you very much for that question. Wendy Young, I know you brought up update reports. Would you like to turn your mic on? Thank you.
Through you, Chair. So the suggestion from the deputation earlier was an interesting one. I'm happy to bring that back to the designers who were doing the wall. I'll be able to take the rest of it on notice. It's another way to think about it. If there's a way of doing it more cheaply, then we are more than willing to consider everything. So
there are complexities with the State Heritage Place and also an old cemetery, which needs to be done respectfully. So we have a professor from Flinders University using honours students to assist him. There will be a design element to the new wall. Is that correct?
through the chair, yeah, that's correct. That is all happening in parallel at the moment. So Associate Anik, I don't know how to say it, Anik, who's Professor Martin Frenenberg actually at Adelaide University. It's not going to find out in phenomenal points. Sorry,
It was Peters that you put it in.
Yes, I have all my issues with it.
They're going to be merged anyway.
So he was actually out on site for the first time with a couple of his students this morning, out with our project manager, preparing to do their investigative scribe. The complexity of the state heritage and the the historical cemetery is to make every design option much more complex. But so we're going to take on alternative solution ideas definitely.
Councillor Hennessy, are you comfortable with that answer, Councillor Davies? Thank you. Thank you. And I also personally, because it is a state heritage site, that we might actually be eligible for some funding to several state heritage funds, given its prominence and its importance. So I think that's when it's come back to that. It might be worth, even at this stage, trying to investigate what we would be eligible for. I think that's a really good suggestion. Thank you, Councillor Hennessy. Any other item on this? You've got a question?
Thanks, Mayor. Yeah, just the second item, the Williston Cemetery Headstone project, the concept plan. Again, members are able to have just a more detailed breakdown of what that would involve and the objectives behind it.
Thank you.
That would be great. Thank you.
That can be taken on notice. Is that you, Andrew? Thank you. I'm going over the page now. I'm taking a risk. Just going over the page. Okay, so I'm on page 21. Any items on this page? No, yes, councillor Sandon.
Thank you, Karen. Yeah, I'm just raising the issue again about you know, the improved bus stop facilities program. We've never received any report about who uses the buses. And I do a regular run around and so forth, and you know, another $100,000. To me, that should be below the line, because has anybody complained about the bus stops?
I think we're required to do it.
And
And
by who required?
state government has required us to do that. So I don't think we can get around it. I think that needs, my personal opinion, I think it needs to stay. And there are many older people in our community who use our bus services. They do, and there's quite a number of school students that actually catch the bus as well. So I have a slightly different view. I see many people using the buses, and yes, there's not many, but we have those smaller buses, and I think they work really well, those small buses. They seem to fit better in the town. Anyway, any other discussion? Yes, councillor Lorna.
Just on the buses there, completely on part of the loan. Putting mandatory 100% compliance by December 2022. Short last cycle.
That's correct. You read that right.
So we're not there.
We're not
So
there yet.
what does that mean? The rest of the council that we not believe on 100% compliance.
Well, we need to have them done by December 2022, and I guess that's something we need to do. Of last year, it's been not fine. Is it 223? Is it 223?
No, the original requirement was by December 2022, and largely we have done the EPA compliance upgrades. This last piece of work is actually to do with the bus stops out by the VIC and Castle Carlson. Those are two very prominent ones. They've got a number of issues related to them, and we've been dealing with through media for quite a while to try and come up with solutions and try and get funding in to sort it out. That these are the last bit of work, and it will be done. So all of it is done.
I think that clarifies that question.
That does clarify that question, but in the field that I work in, we've got to have mandatory compliance by a date. What risk is the council at present for those not being compliant?
I think I might take this offline and ask if you can take that on notice and provide further detail on why we haven't complied with those two. You did make mention where the often extenuating circumstances and the conflicts. So I think we'll take it offline and they'll provide further information on why. Okay, I think that might help. Thank you. Yes. Yes, Deputy Mayor.
And this might be a silly question, but so, the bottom line item, capital works engineering design program, 200,000. Firstly, appreciate that you're able to reduce by 100 grand. Also, the fact that we're seeing those comments come through, I think it's the which I also appreciate. Is this project? Yeah, it's a silly question, that's all good, but is this project able to spend over 2 budget cycles? If you have to choose between the 9 ones on that list.
Wendy?
Through the chair, we can make that decision. It just puts the implementation of those projects at risk of being delayed. And obviously, I've already rationalised that budget in association with the team, and we're trying to align these fund programs to align up with policy, and I guess also projects that have got a higher rate of customer requests associated with them as well. So we can make that happen, but the repercussion may be in a degree, and that's understanding that they might get a few extra complaints for a bit longer if we delay things for a year.
Yeah. Some of these are stormwater management projects, erosion control, load assessment, Clonley Reserve Forward, the fire trucks. I think they're quite essential, but look, you know, yeah. The question, valid question. Okay, yes, Councillor Davies.
Yeah, well, look, I'll test the waters on the motion and see how unpopular it is. So the new footpath program, you know, obviously it's always good to be catching up on our amount of footpaths, but we don't necessarily always every year have to be working full bore into it if we're having a particularly rough year. So I'm going to suggest a reduction to reduction of 50,000 for the new footpath and see whether it gets a second.
I'm going to ask for a second. No second. Right, give it a shot. Yeah, I'm gonna go over the page. Oh, yes, you've got a question?
Thanks, Mayor. Might be able to answer this through you now. Just the new street lighting program, which is run under the Capital Works Engineering Design.
Yeah.
What exactly does that involve? Because I was aware that the LED program was at completion. So what is this $50,000 for installing new street lights? What does that involve?
Where are you?
I'm on there already. I'm so sorry. I think you saw it.
It's all new street lights.
Yes,
Township, new street light and 50,000 budget reduced by 50.
Through you, Mayor Karen. So we actually had this question from that last meeting, and you might have been absent, Councillor Wyatt. So it's had to do with LED conversion of streetlights. This is a budget line that council has in its budget every year to address the fact that there are certain areas of the town that have enough street lighting. So we prioritise this budget to generally to where we get clusters of PLMs around the need for extra light. And so we've already have this budget, and I'll strongly recommend against touching it. But it is a need in our community, in older areas of town.
Thank you. Okay, so we're on page 22. Thank you. Can I, the second item down, which is deliver the transport asset renewal program. It repeats again that there's more money required for the footpath renewal and the field industrial renewal program, and you've just dealt with those on the previous page. That's renewal, that's not new. That's new. Okay, no, thank you, that's answered my question. Okay, thank you, that was easy, thank you. All right, any other items on this page? Somebody's putting their hand up, there's two people put their hand up. No, I'm going over the page. Yes, question, yeah.
The delivery of the P2, PT 30840. What is meant by this is the minimum amount that can be allocated. So I'm taking renewal works, third on property. The council owned buildings.
Yeah, building asset renewal program as per building asset management plan. Are we listening? Hello. Okay, I need an answer.
Thank you. This basically is as per the asset manager, the building asset management plan. And effectively what we're actually finding is that there's a lot of, I suppose, renewal requirement for buildings that we own. And this is what was considered as a minimum amount to actually undertake the renewal works that's required in this facility.
On the council as part of, so I might ask a separate question. Karen, under we're required to, ensure that we're in line with our building asset management plan, aren't we? And, can you just explain the role of council as it relates to the asset management plan?
So from a council perspective, we have to have asset management plans in place for all of our main asset classes, and building assets is one of them. So in relation to that comment about the minimum, so this is based on the condition of our building assets and effectively what the building manager feels as though is the minimum spend that we should actually be for this financial year, given the maintenance work that has actually been undertaken on our, from our current perspective, on our buildings over the last couple of years. So,
and another question, when we get audited, now is it disclosure, who does the audit? Who does the audit? And they apply a modelling exercise on how we manage our asset management plan. Is that correct?
So from a SCOTUS perspective is to sit there and say that they will actually look at the relationship between our asset management plan and our budgets, our strategy, like all those major strategies and those major documents, to sit there and say, okay, well, we have an asset management plan that says that we should be investing X amount of money per year in our asset classes, compared to what we actually have in our budget, compared to what we have in our long-term financial plans, and effectively they should actually be linked through and have some synergies through that perspective. So, and again, it's that same scenario of to sit there and say, if you don't invest in assets, what actually happens is that you actually incur more maintenance costs, which is what was actually happened over the last few years. We've actually been incurring significant maintenance costs on our assets because we haven't been doing the investment from a capital perspective in those building assets. So,
thank you for those answers, Sharon. Does that help? Yeah. Thank you. Okay. Yes, definitely.
So we're on the bottom of page 22, the emergency management for cost and safety improvements. Don't get me wrong, I completely understand with tanks and flooding, and but why now, when we've dealt with sort of flooding in the past, do we need the new swing gate signage and all that sort of stuff? Why this next year?
Thank you.
Through the chair, so these emergency swing gates have been put over the line year after year after year. Obviously we've tried to reduce the scope and the budget we put up this year again. After last year was the last season where we had some over those gates a couple of times a week for a period of months. The importance of being able to manage manage the emergency closure of at least the Murray Street ward is really important. It takes a lot of resource to improve that traffic management. If they're really organised and get it out in an efficient way, ultimately they'd like this thing goes on. You know, it might be as a private student.
And then a follow-up, what I'm hearing there is we can have some efficiencies and not have staff moving and using the resources. So therefore, there would be a return on investment to a degree. If we're looking about this particular $30,000, we're now not paying the staff X, but they're doing that. But it doesn't quite calculate that way. Yeah, that's right. So yeah. Yeah, I don't think I'm too happy to move motion to put this below the line, but it's the point to make today. Yeah.
I'm going to go to the page. On page 23. So the King Street multi-storey car park leaks like a sieve. We saw that the other day when we were parking in there, and it was just pouring in. Anyway, Councillor Henderson. Yeah, I'll test the waters. I'd like to move a motion, please, to remove the two closed circuit TV bits. So one of them is to do with the dog park, and the other one is to do with the Sports and Aquatic Centre. My reason for this is particularly supported by the questions that Councillor Lorna asked at the last meeting about the value for money for what we're actually achieving. It seems a lot of money, and I haven't yet had any background information on why we need. And just to clarify, we've got P230836, yep, and P230762. Is that right, Phil? Have you got that? Yeah, I think that's correct. Okay. Sorry to interrupt.
That's okay, no, I'm just saying, I have no understanding of why we need closed circuit dog park. Have we had police reports? Has the police requested that? The same thing at the aquatic centre. I think there's a very much perception from the community that we're overdoing it a bit. So I think we could remove $125,000 by removing those two items.
I'll go to, I think, who would like to clarify?
We've had issues, the dog park with, dog owners having fights, and I think the police have been called up there, it wasn't the dogs.
It's not the
But
dog,
it was about
the owners.
the owners. But that's why we need to do something, that's the division up there.
Anyway, I'm going to ask Dave Barrett. You wanted to say something?
So through the chair, in relation to the other one, the Sports Aquatic Centre needs. We have a real issue with antisocial behaviour at those two facilities. We've had a number of police incidents over the last 12 months. Police reports of staff have threatened not feeling safe to leave the premises to go to their vehicles and the like. Police patrols on a regular occasion. And this recommendation to have CCTV systems that actually monitor the outside of buildings, for example, will provide prevention mechanism and assist with staff safety. We've also had burnt out cars, theft of vehicles from the sports centre surrounds, and these things will assist with preventing that sort of antisocial behaviour activity and provides a great opportunity for South Australia Police as the link to their station.
Have I got a seconder for this motion? Yeah. Yes, sorry, Councillor Sample. Councillor Sample has seconded this motion. Thank you. Wish to second or buy? No.
Only Karen is, I know I've asked the question many times before, is who monitors this? Because I go back 22 years to being involved and we heard all that when they have CCTV cameras, cameras in the main street. I had an incident when I was there that somebody tried to shoot me because the ball came through the window, but there was no sign on the CCTV that anything at all was monitored because, you know, it just didn't work. I just wonder who it is that is monitoring this, and as Mr. Barrett said, it will help, but at the time, it's not going to help anybody at that particular time. I just don't see the data for it and listening to Councillor Allen the other night. And I heard about these things, the finance park and things like that. And I just don't agree that we need that. I don't agree that it would help anybody. And I've never heard a report come to this council as, wow, the CCTV camera did this and fix it. And we spend a lot of money.
Thank you. Any other discussion, Councillor White?
I'm not sure what the process is with this, Mayor, through you, if whether it needs to go obviously through the movers tender. But I'd potentially be happy to move the CCTV extension at Conley Park below the line that leaves the recreation centre and aquatic centre one above the line. But obviously it's been moved in second. I just want to put that on the table to see what you said from council for.
Well, we have a live motion, so I'll proceed with that motion, and then if that gets down, gets voted down, then you can put up an alternative motion. Okay, Councillor Koch?
I'll be voting against this. I mean, on dog like TV dogs, and there is issues up there that we do need good coverage up there to sort out issues, and it is to do with prevention. If people know there's cameras there watching them, will prevent them if they don't social behaviour, and also there is some issues with the dogs as well, and it's sort of which we report that as well.
Thank you. Any other, Warner? And then everything else?
Yeah, so the question, so with the actual sort of extension of Comic Park. So we have an additional campus out there, it's already cameras there, and we comes with it there. And if we've got cameras there, then they're not doing their job as it is.
I don't think the cameras are up where the dog park is. Sorry? I can't hear you.
Through the chair, so there is a camera on the dog park there, and it has a standalone recorder, which I answer Sam's questions, but it also relates to the cost of these units. So when we've done the extension of the dog park to provide the additional, it's another permanent temporary area, for kind of a better terminology. The existing camera doesn't cover that area. So this was raised as one of the, in consultation on the capital reports we did with the dog park, upgrades late last year. This is the one component that it really is required to maintain that additional area to have coverage of it. So if there are incidents between dogs, if there is between dogs and people, people and people, the footage is high resolution and it does go back to the police and help resolve these issues. So it's sad to have this it's operation at a dog park.
Thank you. Okay,
Yeah, I'm not quite sure where I sit with it. I get it. I understand the need for preventional. I just hate that feeling of a couple of bad apples ruining the rest, and then now having to invest in because I would say, 9 out of 10 people normal and respectful, but then that one, they come in. And I'm not saying it's not happening, I completely understand and the reason why. But just the $125,000 with the combined going to it and not understanding, I guess, the amount of cameras, I probably won't support this motion, because I almost like Councillor White's option of going, maybe we look at one this year and one next year, maybe that's what you were talking about. But I'm on the fence a little bit on this one, so we'll see how we go.
Members, it would be very concerning if the sport and athletics and the CCTV system in particular doesn't get up. This is a serious work health safety issue, and it would be a concern if we don't have that system in for the aquatic centre and the rec centre.
I maybe share sentiment of some of the other councillors that I definitely hear what the CEO is saying. That's a concern that I have. I think that having that CCTV camera at the aquatic centre does speak to a real need, and we need to make sure that our staff feel safe and are looked after. We do have young staff working at the aquatic centre to quite some late hours, and I understand that. I'm not sure it's going to stop home drivers and things like that, but I really do take the point that we need to be able to protect our staff. The dog park, however, I'm really look, I think having planning in a way which creates high frequency areas where the people around is the best form of prevention. I don't think CCTV will go a long way towards preventing things. Maybe it will help in police resolution of the matters, but some of that stuff I can't see it as a priority at the moment. So I won't be supporting the motion, but I do like the idea that's been raised by Councillor White and talked about by Deputy Mayor Shanks.
Okay, councillor Hennessy, you can wrap up the debate if you like. Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for the debate. That's all very useful. I touch upon, Councillor Solomon, CCTV doesn't actually prevent, these events. It just allows the police to view them afterwards. So if we have serious concerns about the safety of our staff, of course, we must make that incredibly difficult. But I don't just think putting a CCTV up is the answer. There are several steps you do beforehand to ensure their safety, and that might mean security guards as those staff leave, and a whole range of things. I put this up and I'm ask you to support it. However, what I want to say is we are having incredible difficulty cutting anything out of this budget. We have just voted in a lot more. But what point are we going to get tough guys and say we can't do all of this? We could be going through this till midnight at this stage. We are not taking anything out of this budget. We put lots back into it. So leave it with you.
I'm going to put that motion. All those in favour of the motion, please raise your hands. All those against, it's lost. Then you're going to move an alternative motion, Councillor Wright, and there's a P230763. Sports and Aquatic Centre.
No, so I'm going to move that the P230836, the CCTV at Conley Park.
I'll go below the
is
line.
moved below the line. I think that was a really good debate before, and thank members, I think it points to some bigger problems, and obviously the safety of our staff is of paramount importance. So I think ensuring that the upgrades at the recreation centre and the aquatic centre remain. But as it's touched on by many members, I think the CCTV at Conley Park, from what we've heard information-wise, potentially could be in for a future financial year, or there could be some other measures in place. I think if there is antisocial behaviour going on at the dog park, I think there's some other options that will not cost $35,000 that we could put in place and investigate before we get to this point. So I don't think we've got to rule it out completely, but I think for now, if the council would wish to proceed and move this below the line, I think there's some alternative options for this scenario. One thing I would raise though, as Councillor Lorna mentioned, and I think Councillor Hennessy referred to, is just about these costing, but it's a lot of money for some cameras. So I guess I guess that's something we need to be mindful of. As Councillor Hennessy pointed to, we're not taking a lot out of this budget. So ensuring that while it is important we have these in and the safety of our staff is important, ensuring that we're getting our bang for our buck and ensuring that money is being put to well use. But no, I'd like to move that the CCTV from the back below the line and hope that we have everyone council support for this.
Thanks for bringing that up, Councillor White. Obviously, it's going to support this motion. I don't believe the dog park really should be really our responsibility to monitor all these people that are going to the dog park. We don't plans all over the place, and stuff happens out there too, this sort of thing. So I'm a little bit dubious about that. Still on the aquatic things, I don't believe the currency of that aquatic centre is going to protect anyone. It may catch some perpetrators down the track, but it's not going to stop the issues that are going on down there. And that's a real social issue that we have in our communities, sort of thing. So I haven't got the answer for it. If I did, we've got to charge a lot of money to make that work and be done. So thank you, Councillor White. I will support the motion. Yes.
Yeah, I completely understand the sentiment that Councillor Hennessy put forward before. That's why I've been trying to work on this thousands below the line, and I do appreciate members putting forward these options. I think the staff safety item, I'm putting a bit of trust in staff and through you, Henry, here to say, look, I'm taking on board what you're saying, and I don't want to put any staff at risk. However, obviously a good news story comes forward and says, yeah, it didn't cost $9,000. We've managed to get some scoping, and we managed to get the system in play to the level we want. But yeah, we've managed to refine that a little bit. So I am putting that trust through staff, and I'm hoping to see that good outcome because it is that safety concern, but then also removal of the laws and sense, because yes, the cameras are there, but again, pointed out it's not a preventative thing, it's a after the fact thing. I mean, yeah, in pubs, we know how that sort of works, so. Yeah, so I'm happy to support this because, yeah, again, going back to the point of the bad apples ruining it for the rest and then having to fork out $35,000 on this is frustrating. To be fair, it's frustrating for the aquatic centre as well, but we have staff there, we have young staff there, and you know, this is part of that safety environment. So yeah, I'm happy to support this particular motion.
What I might be supporting is just from my experience of using the dog park. Increasingly people are using that after hours. And that's the time I get to take the dogs up. So you get into the twilight area, and that's when there potentially could be issues. So this, by having the cameras there, it is a prevention measure, and it does provide some level of security and confidence for people that are up in that park, you know, on those twilight times, because it is a popular area, and particularly now that it's been extended, because now the little dogs are where the big dogs used to be, and so the big dogs are in the little dog, but a big extended area, so there's a fairly big area to actually cover. So as was pointed out, the existing cameras don't cover that big area, and roughly it almost doubles the size of the dog park. So you've actually got half the dog park that isn't covered by CCTV. So I might be supporting that just because of it provides a level of security and confidence for people that use that facility.
Thank you. Councillor White, in close debate.
Thanks, Mayor. Look, I appreciate all members' input on this one. Councillor Koch, I agree with you. I think maybe what I can do, if this motion passes, and I urge members to support it, because I think there are some other ways and alternatives we can go about this, and maybe that would be myself or a member putting up a motion at an ordinary council meeting and asking staff to investigate some other options. Potentially that could be something we could flag to look at, because I think if there is a problem in the community there, we should be looking at how council can assist. But I think at this stage, $35,000 for a CCTV camera, in my view, is not going to necessarily prevent that or stop that. We've got some other cheaper alternatives first. So I encourage members to support this and put it over the line, and then in the future we can look at what else we can do.
I'm going to put that motion. All those in favour, please raise your hands. All those against, it is carried. Thank you. It is carried. Carried. Thank you. Thank you. All right, now, yes.
Mayor Karen, on item P230809, I sort of looked at that, and there's a number of people that have actually said to me that I like myself, I like to see a vehicle undercover. We're looking at a $500,000 grader, and any of you that at any time after the day is finished, drive down past the depot and you'll see probably $1 million worth of trucks all lined up alongside the building with no cover. And trucks deteriorate when they're out in the weather and all that. And we're spending 90,000. I might have thought that we've got this guy running around at the moment doing an R&R, a review and restructure. I mentioned it to him when we were on the trip there the other day, but this is only for employees. Safety, and that's important, but I just wondered why it's never been looked at to put those beautiful vehicles undercover. Just try and paint some on Wallaby, you'll see what I'm talking about. There's this whole row of trucks down either side, they don't go under any cover. And if they deteriorate, so therefore they lose value when they're trading it.
Through the chair, Councillor Campbell, I would love to have all our plant undercover, and I'd love to have a brand new depot, and I know that they'll come with a budget for that. So that was the strategy has been accepted through council. At this point, it's not clear exactly what facilities we need to have at the depot, so that's not part of any budget bid. But this 90,000, addresses a few different issues. So one of them is that there's been some land management issues over time, which is to neighbours, neighbouring properties to the depot. So this finalises the works to actually manage those environmental impacts to neighbouring residents in Williston. But it also importantly addresses some access issues for staff at the depot. I don't know how many of you drive down Paxton Street, but the actual main time. Sorry, I do. The main entrance is actually on a terrible curve. Despite all our attempts at parking control, vehicles continue to park on the other lines. Right at the point of day that most of our staff tend to leave, people having to put their noses right out into the lane to actually cross safely, which isn't very safe at all. So this is actually to address that issue and the safety of staff. And I've got a couple of different options that might actually reduce the cost of what we've put in this bid, and obviously we'll try and do that as cost effectively as possible, but it is an important safety growth.
Thank you for that clarification. Okay. Yes.
So this is more or less regards to the saying safety of people leaving entering the site. And so we're talking about a known time, we're saying there's an issue. We don't have any other parking, expect this go there at that time in time.
So they do get fined, yes, I think.
Yeah, Chair, so we're trying to manage it through a number of different ways. We've changed parking control. We do have our parking inspectors out there. There are some people who are just
They must be made of money. It's fine, expensive.
So like I said, there are a couple of different options that we've been exploring. In fact, we've actually had a couple of additional options that we've just started talking about, which would be possibly less costly.
So I'm going to keep moving. I'm going to keep moving. Yes, councillor Tom.
Just regards to the item from the bottom, P230796.
Waterproofing.
Waterproofing investigation. What's incorporated in that investigation? What's the end goal of that investigation?
For development of recycled water supply. I think that's the end game. Is that correct?
Yes, through the chair, I'll take that one on as well. So historically, council has done some work around looking at waterproofing the town. It's looking at the main part, looking at importing recycled water into the town, different potential beneficiaries of that. That needs to have a review given the change in potential distribution networks that are around, looking at the cost benefit analysis of how that would work with different water supply and demand opportunities. It's also trying to bring water harvesting, so still water harvesting more into the perspective of how we waterproof the town.
So it's about water harvesting as well. Yeah.
So just has there been a change that makes this a critical when you mentioned review in there? Is there any critical change? A change which makes this critical to occur this year in this budget?
Wendy.
Through the chair, I guess the use of the word critical can be interpreted how you write. I think this is a piece of work that hasn't been progressed for the last 2 years. It's been in a lovely climatic sequence of having an abundance of water, and at some point we'll go back to not having any. And I think we can just remember how difficult that was to manage through. The reality is at the moment that we haven't got the internal resources to do this analysis, and we do need to get an external company to do the work. Can we hold it off for another year? I really think that's probably up to you as an independent body.
Okay, I think that's answered it. I think if you want more questions, you may need to take that offline. Yeah. Yeah, is that okay?
I'm going to move that item. We're getting late here, and it's going to take much aid. It's not critical this year.
So you want to take waterproofing water out of
the waterproofing water investigation? Yeah, that's an item P230796.
Do you want to second that? You want to second that? Okay, yep. Any other discussion? Do you want to speak? Do you want to speak? CEO?
Just further to Wendy's comments, this is an area of investigation that we've been touching on, and as Wendy mentioned, we haven't been able to progress. I think if there's, as equally as we've been progressing energy and solar panel initiatives, and other environmental outcomes, this is one area that we're really falling behind. And there are some opportunities that we're progressing in a piecemeal approach, which we're doing the best we can in terms of seeking opportunities to redirect water to certain outcomes, particularly in the rural areas in the first instance. Looking at strategies in terms of recharging aquifers, and then having a purple pipe network through Bulla. The concept of waterproofing Bulla is something that we need to progress. And I would say that this is a critical piece of investigation that we need to pursue, because we are negotiating on individual properties that will benefit from a bit of a collective and strategic awareness.
Okay, so we've got a motion. Any other discussion on this motion, Councillor Davies?
Yeah, not willing to support this one. I think this is one of these motions that is for a lot of future efficiency. Spending on water is a gigantic part of what we have to deal with as a council. And the costs of being in a drought period and not having our water infrastructure set up how we like it are going to far outweigh 60,000 here.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor, we are going to run out of time.
A motion and debate.
We're in the middle of the motion, so I'm going to deal with that first. Thank you.
No worries. I guess just some comments here that you can play over my head. On one side, we've approved swing gas to the flooding, which I understand is might be short term, and then on the other side, we're preparing ourselves for drought. But actually, to keep on running over and over and over in my head, I get it. It's just, it's working against me at the moment in my own head, where I'm trying to find some savings and the opportunities that the CEOs have raised are new opportunities that I haven't been vetted on yet. So deal with the account that I didn't realise that there's potential. So I didn't have that. But yeah, I'm a little bit torn on this one, because I get the environmental benefits, and I'm so well listening about from the schedule plans outcomes. So yeah, it's another one I'm very informed about.
Yeah, we spend a lot of money on water. And we will be going into another what is it? El Niño. Yeah, and we're coming out of the El Niño. And we will be going into another 10-year drought. There's no doubt about that. So I tend to agree with Councillor Davies that having these plans and investigations of waterproofing Gawler, this isn't just about one area of Gawler, this is the entire town. And if we were able to waterproof and get piping to recharge our aquifers, etc., I think that would be an amazing outcome from an environmental perspective. Anyway, that's my thoughts on that. Yes, Councillor Koch?
Yeah, I might be supporting this. I've got I suppose, background in this. I've worked in areas, Amazon areas for a lot of years, and I really understand the hydrology of how it all works, and the importance of being able to use water really, really efficiently. I think at the moment we tend to be just using water as if it's well, it does drop out of the sky, but as it has very little value. And I think this will actually focus our minds on how we can best use our water really, really efficiently and still get really good outcomes for our community. So I'm quite excited about waterproofing water. I think there's a lot of innovative things that we can do there. And long term, it will be great savings financially and also environmentally. So I'm all for Waterford Board, so I might be supporting this. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Councillor Hennessy?
Yeah, I'm going to support it because again, we're not making any decisions to withdraw anything from the budget. It's not to say it's not a great idea. It would be such a good project that perhaps when a budget review is done, this might be given priority. If there was any savings, available, but we are going to have to cut some things. I'm starting to get to the point where we'll be going out to the community with a consultation on a plan. It's $1.637 million over.
Thank you, councillor Hennessy. Any other discussion? If not, councillor Solomon, you would be happy for me to put the motion? Thank you very much. I'm going to put that motion. All those in favour of the motion, please raise your hands. All those against, it is carried. Division, councillor Davis supported division. Motion is set aside. All those in favour, please stand. All those in favour are councillor Warner, councillor White, councillor Solomon, councillor Hennessy, and councillor Sample. All those against are councillor Kosh, councillor Davies, and Deputy Mayor Shanks. The motion is carried. Thank you. Did you get that, girls? Did you get that? I need to see that it's correct. Sorry, councillor Solomon. Okay, in favour, councillor Warner, councillor 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3. That's correct. Yeah, thank you. Okay, right. I'm going to go over the page now. Do we want an extension of time? We're going to run out of time. Our meetings stop at 10:30. And if we go to 11, we need an extension of time. Are you happy to move that way, councillor Sample? Councillor Sample has moved that we go to 11 o'clock. Do I have a seconder, councillor White? Seconded by councillor White. Thank you. I'll put that motion. All those in favour, please raise your hands. Carried unanimously. All right. I'm on page 24 now.
I thought we discussed the fact that the $90,000 for P23 816 was going to put me below the line.
After that. I think that was clarified that the line pay for itself in 3 years. Is that correct, Wendy? Yes. It'll pay for itself in 3 years. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I had a question. In regards to what the hydrovac trailer is doing, sort of day to day, we see the project bids coming through, and I'm assuming that they're based on previous costs. Has the fact that we don't have the contract in our hydrovac contractor been factored in across these capital works? Because if not, then I feel there's a little bit. Does that make sense?
So Wendy, if you can answer that question, please.
Through the chair, so I haven't sat and taken $30,000 across multiple lines off in light of getting hydro back. So footpaths and tree planting work, it will have some impact to the capital work delivery, it will have some impact to the operation budget. I guess we could try and take some budget out of those lines, and make $30,000 savings. That's the point I can definitely take on board.
But the question, the other question was, this will pay for itself in 3 years, is that correct?
Yes, yeah, somewhere between 2 and 3 years. Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
That's handy to know, because in that case, I almost want to lower this bid because it's allowed for elsewhere. But I'm a bit reluctant to just do it on that top here, because if $90,000 buys a hydro trailer, but as we've heard, realistically, the savings haven't been calculated throughout the projects that they go to. So that offset, that year payback only starts once we're able to rescope the project moving forward, because we approved the budget by 6. So you know that thing, yeah.
But through the chair, I guess the other qualifier to that is, once the budget's approved, you then go to procurement. Now, noting the times for delivery of machinery at this point, it might be 9 months to 12 months before we actually receive the grant, and therefore there's a chance that in this financial year we might not actually have that offset. Which I know is not what you want to hear, but it might be better that I quantify as part of 24, 25. Because again, I'm not 100% sure when the savings are going to be realised in this financial year, so I don't know when I'll have the asset to replace the current contract.
Sorry.
So what Wendy said was she's not prepared to take out 30,000, for example.
Absolutely.
Because it might not be here for another 12 months.
So, in that case, can we not turn around and commit to the purchase, but get the quoting and get it ready for the next financial year, if we've already budgeted for the hydro backing of these projects leading into this next financial year, and the savings can't start until we actually have the plan? Would it not be more sensible to move that below the line for the board to come back with a quote quantifying what it's going to be for a budget bid coming into the 24-25?
Wendy, you need to respond to that.
That is through the chair, sorry. That's an entirely plausible thing to do.
So you don't need it this year?
We would love to get it in, because it's not that it just delivers us services in terms of essential contract charges and services, and it means it's actually got the services available in-house when we need them. So we're not just relying on contractors to provide the services. So it actually has a timing and an efficiency benefit as well. But I guess I'm just being, considerate of the position that we're all in, and if that's the preference, then we could come back with a.
I'm going to go to David Barrett. He's itching to say something.
So through the chair, what's the feasible option, Councillor Shanks, if you delay the procurement, which the budget gives the authority to go to procurement, then the ordering of the equipment won't happen until the next budget's adopted, and we might have another 12 months. We don't have another 12 months. It's just the council processes in procurement. We need the budget adopted to go to procurement. What we can do though is provide the savings on future budgets and the next year budget at a review time when we know when the delivery is going to be made.
Okay, so that's quite useful. Thank you, David.
Yeah, that was very useful, but what the problem is here is we're borrowing $90,000 that everyone might not be expenditure until the budget year I'm talking about, purely because of our procurement policies. This particular. Am I making any sense here?
I might go to Sharon. Sharon needs to say something as well, so I think you get a bit nervous and no.
I suppose it's a clarification, it's not necessarily a procurement policy, it's just basically the supply chain issues where we just say potentially there may be delays, in to sit there and say, okay, yes, we can incorporate some savings, but effectively those savings might not be realised if the delivery is actually delayed. I suppose it's vice versa, is to sit there and say, you can sit there and say, oh, okay, well, put a $30,000 saving across the projects or the operating budget because we've actually got this facility, but effectively there's no guarantee that they're actually going to deliver. Is the other point. And again, it's not necessarily obviously from a staffing perspective, we won't commit to expenditure unless we know that there's a budget there. Taking David's point is to sit there and say we won't authorise the commitment of expenditure if there's no budget. Pre that point in time. So that's our policy. But effectively the issue about the delivery is more the supply chain issue, not necessarily our procurement policies. Thank you. Yes, Councillor Warner.
So I just want to get an understanding of this. Have we got the lead time of the actual device?
So through the chair, so we haven't tested the market, we haven't gone to us, but I guess I know the lead times for is based on the current yes program and it is extended.
One simple question through the chair is we can't allow for a deposit of the plant and have money set aside. I think in the next budget, it's going to take us 12 months. We can say, hey, whatever it is, 10-15%, we've got to pay deposit on this plant and have the remainder quarantined for when it's released in the new budget.
Karen, I'm going to call this to a close in a minute, so you might want to wrap it up. Mayor. So effectively, ultimately, if you approve that budget this year, we can sit there and say we can carry on forward and basically incur the cost next year. But effectively, we can't quarantine anything unless the budget unless you, as the chamber, has actually approved that budget for us to actually expand that budget. So again, it's to sit there and say, that's the budget policy. If you want, as a chamber, if you want to change the budget policy, to sit there and say that we commit to come out before we've actually got the money or approved budgets, that's fine. But under current budget policy, no, we are not in a position to do that. Thank you. All right. Okay.
But we're just modest here, $190,000 we moved below the line for this. Now I get why a company buys a phone and doesn't contract there anymore. I get those efficiencies, but the lead time, the timing, the savings and everything, we could really end up in a position where this $90,000 is earmarked for this financial year coming up. And then it doesn't actually be expended until the next financial year, which then also has the allocation of the hydrovac stuff in the projects as it is. And I get the safety net that is to be provided there. As a company, we're talking about equipment that is going to pick up efficiencies. I would turn around and talk to some suppliers and ensure that I know the lead times and ensure that I can time that with what works. Now, I completely understand the local government is a completely different base, but the fact that we've already got a status quo, which yes, I agree, not probably the most effective and efficient way to go about it, but this particular item, I just would like to know the lead times, the overall cost. $90,000 is seeming like a round figure to me. I want to know what we expend each year, like every single year and what we have historically. So I am going to test the waters by saying,
unfortunately, and it goes against what I'm talking about, as well, equipment, it's just, it's just a little bit on it. So I'd like to meet that up before we.
Thank you. Thank you. Second, Councillor Warner. Any discussion? If not, I'm gonna put this motion, that, the hydrovac trailer be moved from over the line. All those in favour, please raise your hands. All those against, please carry. Thank you. Right. Below the line, that finishes everything, doesn't it? That completes. Yeah, yeah. So now we go back to, I'm going back to our agenda. And yes. Just before we finish, the second to the bottom one, the light fleet 10-year replacement program. I know that it's been raised before by, I think, the Deputy Mayor and perhaps others, that we adjust our replacement vehicle replacement program to look for some savings in that. I'm just wondering if there's any appetite from others to review that. CEO, do you want to make any comment on the light fleet?
Yeah, that's been raised a couple of times. We have sent through a detailed response. I think the overarching message is that we have sweated the assets and we're getting to a point where we'll lose money. That's where we're at.
You'll lose money, how much?
Well, I don't know how much. But really, did you? Well, we sent an email around, we sent details about the consequences of delaying the decision. If you want that sent again, we can, but you know, we have delayed the turnover of the vehicles, but I'll let Wendy provide further details.
Wendy?
Through the chair, and then I haven't got my computer in front of me, so I can't have all the exact numbers in front of me. So council has held off its light fleet replacement over the course of a number of years, and what we have found is we've had increased breakdowns, increased maintenance requirements, and at the end of the day, we're just lucky at the moment that the market is what it is, that we're still getting decent resale value. So the longer we hold on to these assets, the more we're costing maintenance. And we don't know what the market's going to do in terms of resale, and we do depend on that resale to obviously contribute towards the funding of the light fleet replacement. At the end of the day, it's going to be a call. I think it's making trying to make a short-term win that was going to have a long-term aim. But I know that private industry does this differently again, as the government has different ways of doing this. I guess the advice I've had from our fleet manager is that this hasn't served us well, and is likely to serve us even less well if we keep going down this line.
Okay, yeah, Councillor Sample.
Thank you, Mayor Karen. I can't agree, Henry, about the losing the money on the vehicle. At the moment, new cars aren't available. And at the moment, with my friends that are in the car selling business, they've never got so much money for second-hand cars. And I have to congratulate council on the way they look after their vehicles. If I wanted to buy a vehicle, I'd get the option as soon as it was taken down, because the vehicles that come from this council are in matching. And I would recommend it, and I've also recommended to a number of people that have actually gone and bought them, and they've said they're some of the best vehicles there. Our vehicles, you know, other than maybe it might need a polish because it's out the weather all the time, but without a doubt, the vehicles now with the market, the second-hand vehicles are earning more money. In some cases, they're getting the money they paid for them in the first place. So I can't agree that we need to replace it. If they were kept for a year, longer or something, and put into the next budget, you're still not going to be too far behind. I just can't believe that with the people I know in the industry.
Okay, how do you want to proceed, Councillor? Yes. Yeah.
Thank you. Just the renewed hardscaping asset program, which is P230717. Through you, Mayor, just wondering if we could get a little bit more information on what that involves.
Well, it says renew street and open space furniture fittings and equipment which are unserviceable. Wendy?
Through the chair, so we've got open space and asset management plan, all of that information sits in our asset management system. So for this provided as part of the budget, there are the other items that are due for renewal. And so this isn't putting in brand new stuff, this is renewal, this is part of managing our assets as per our asset management plan. Bins, seats, shelters, all of that type of thing.
You need reasonable seats for people to sit on. Yeah. Yeah. And that's part of that renewal. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. All right. Okay. How do you wish to proceed with the light plan? What do you want to do? Lord, Councillor Warner.
Yeah, we're going to go out on an end so that we put that below the line. I believe in another 12 months or so, we're not going to lose that much even in the actual trading, and we can't see the massive costs in as we say, we're maintaining our vehicles pretty well anyway, so there's not going to be a huge cost in maintenance on these vehicles. I know a few people aren't going to be happy because they're not going to get a flashy new car at the moment, but I believe our budget will be better for it at this point in time.
Now, seconded by Councillor Samble. Discussion. If there's no discussion, we're going to put this motion. You happy with that? I'm going to put that motion. So this is the light fleet be moved below the line. All those in favour, please raise your hands. All those against. The motion is carried. The motion is lost on the casting vote of the mayor. Thank you. All right. Now I'm going to go to the agenda, which and I'm on page 6 of 34. So our agenda, and we've got 3 points. CEO, if you can read that out, please. If you can read that out for the councillor.
Part 1, the council supports in principle the proposed initiative and capital projects as set out in attachment 2 and 3, in further of presenting to the Audit and Risk Committee for comment and review, in brackets and names for the initiative and capital works are to be provided as per the motion on notice and resolution. Part 2. The council supports in principle the draft 23-24 budget set out in the financial statements contained in attachment 1, which incorporates the proposed operating capital projects contained in attachments 2 and 3. For the purposes of presenting to the Audit and Risk Committee for comment and review. In part 3, that council notes that a report on the endorsement of the draft 23-24 amended business plan and budget, which incorporates the 23-24 rating strategy for the purpose of community engagement, will be prepared for council.
When will that come back? So that will come back. Can we put that in the motion? So that won't change, will it? 26th of April. I think it's good to have it in there. Just in the timeline. Ports and principles, as amended, yes. 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 No, it's in a report. For the count at the 26th of April, yes. Ordinary council meeting. Okay. So does everybody understand this motion? Just checking that everyone lives, and we've put as amended, which incorporates the changes that we've made this evening. Okay, so do we have a mover that's happy to move this way? Oh, you've got a question? Sorry. Oh, who's got it? Who's got it on? Thank you. Thank you, Matt. Can I just ask, because possibly this is the first time going through the cycle, if we get comments back from the Audit and Risk Committee, yes, how do we then adjust the budget to in response to that? Is that done at the same 26th of April? Yes, it will be. Right. The Audit and Risk Committee is on the 13th of April. I won't be there because I'll be at our local government OGM, I think. Yeah, although it's only a cocktail thing, so I might be able to go to the Audit Committee. Yes. So it goes to the Audit Committee for comment, Councillor Hennessy, and then it comes back on the 26th of April at an ordinary council meeting for consideration by the council. So we've got there that the 26th also includes community engagement. No. So community will be prepared for the purposes of community engagement will be prepared for the council. So after the 26th of April, it will, if we're happy with it, if council's happy with it, it will go out for community consultation. Okay, thank you. That's provided code. Thank you. Okay. Are you happy to move that way, Councillor Davies?
Yeah, and just to, I guess, in terms of our process, so this is going to come back to us a couple more times. It's coming back to us in April after the Audit Committee looks at it, and that's the approval for community consultation. And then after community consultation, it'll come back to us again. So we do have more chances after multiple sets of reviews by the Audit Committee and the community to keep updating this. But look, I think, we had a very thorough process today. We looked through each item and we agreed as a council that everything that was in there, we decided this is extremely valuable. This is something, these are things that we need to do, or things that if we don't do now, we'll actually be missing out on money in the long term. And so we need to think strategically. And so, and look, I think it would be nice if we could have a better budget line, but obviously, if you want to remove the new footpaths or whatever, you can go ahead and be 350,000 savings. But I think to some extent, you just have to at some point say, look, this is what we agree is important. If this is what we need to go forward with, then our job as the councillors is to sell to the community. We believe every item in this budget is important, and then go with it from there.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Do I have a seconder for this motion? Oh, thank you, Lorna. Thank you. If you wish to speak at all, no. Any discussion, Councillor Deputy Mayor?
Yeah, look, it's been a hard meeting, and I mean, this is what the board of directors are tasked to do every single year. This is $42 million worth of expenditure, a lot of which is made up by our ratepayers, which is, a lot of things very hard also ratepayers as well, self-included. So I think as hard as sometimes it can be, this is why this process exists, and there is still some more hard conversations to come. We do have the Audit and Risk Committee available to us, which we do require an independent advice on. Certainly, so I look forward to seeing what comes back from this. And yeah, just sort of following that process through. I did have a question for you there, if I could, just quickly. I've done a quick calculation, I'm sure showing the answers really easily, just thinking my head around it. But when I go to total expenses, I'm on page 1332, by the way. And I look at the total expenditures and I look at the actuals from 1920 to 2021. And I know a 1.4 million increase.
Where are you?
So on page 13 of 32. Yeah, absolutely. And again, it's got to be a very simple answer. It's just, I couldn't quite get there last night. And my brain is a tick over. But yeah, so when I do my own calculations and I look at the total expenses that we've attracted or are attracting, we go from 2019, 2020 to 2021. That financial year, based on actuals, we ran up by $1.4 million. Then we move to the next financial year, ending 2021 and 22. Another $1.4 million in expenditure so far. And then we move to the year we're in right now, which is based on actual and forecast between those 2 years. That's $2.75 million. This now expenditure that we're talking about in based on this budget, we're at $6.74 million. I just want some clarity around that because am I reading it correctly to say our total expenditure is this one financial year?
So I think part of that is the depreciation. If you want to talk about that, and you would do some work on that, Sharon. So there's two factors. So effectively the big jump is in relation to the net reports and the grant. So that's effectively $4.8 million. At this point in time, that I think by the time that the budget comes back for adoption, that funding allocation will probably be split combination between the current, because there's elements of that project that we don't own, which effectively needs to be expensed through P&L, and there's elements that are actually outgoing assets, so we'll actually go through to the balance sheet and from a capitalised perspective. So $4.8 million of that is just in relation to that one project from an operations perspective. So that's what's causing the big jump. I think other factors is obviously from a wages perspective, as we sit there and say, from those EA, which is linked to CPI, and for the last couple of years we've actually had significantly from CPI, and that's also flowing through from our materials and services as well. So we're actually getting that, you know, as the report says, that we as a council are not immune to those economic factors that are influencing everyone in the community as well. And so those factors are actually taken into account as to why it's there. But the majority of that is actually the network reports redevelopment as to what that increase, that massive increase is on this forecast. In relation to, I suppose, from the actual to the forecast, again, this forecast is actually based on the second budget review. And obviously, as we incur savings through the fact that we haven't been able to get staff, so we've actually had some positions that have actually been open for a period of time. Those adjustments will actually come through from the forecast. But realistically, on the budgeting perspective, we have to, I suppose, forecast on the assumption that we actually have most of our complement of our staff. We have actually built in a target or a reduction of our employee expenses, acknowledging the fact that we won't actually have a full complement of staff from 1st of July. Very similar to that concept that we've actually really put through from with regards to those new positions. Yes, the budget gets approved from the 1st of July, but we know that we won't actually have those people on board and incur those expenses. So we have actually made some allowances through that. But again, until we actually find out, and not necessarily across the 21-22 figures, but I suspect because we actually had that position of people leaving and not being able to find a lot of that
expenses or reduction of those jumps is coming from that perspective.
So we haven't heard an update on the investigation she's doing on depreciation.
So yes, so in relation to, there is actually obviously a big jump in depreciation, so which is a result of the revaluation that was actually put through the financial accounts as part of the 21-22 financial year, which has an impact on depreciation. So we have investigated that, and we have found that there is some, I suppose, some doubling up or incorrect calculations associated with some aspects of the link road. However, a lot of that stuff is actually coming through in the impact of those economic conditions and what that's actually happening on our unit prices. And we actually base the valuation on what it would actually cost to actually replace the asset at that point in time during the evaluation. So we have identified that there will be a slight reduction. The budget reflects that reduction, so we haven't actually taken up the full impact of that. And again, we just probably need some clarification on around how many different efforts that we're actually going to get this financial for the 22-23 financial year, because again, that actually has an impact on depreciation going forward, which again, if we're at the mercy of being at the Board Council, it's that question whether you want you meet the development growth and the expectations that's coming through from the state government and community and all that sort of stuff. And it's just a double-edged sword that as a council that we have to work out how we actually manage that process. Yeah, thank you.
This is a follow-up quickly, but good man. So just so I'm clear, $6.74 million is the jump in additional expenditures. Yes, it's made up with some employee costs, I get all that, but a bulk of that 6.74 million is actually funded by grant funding. Yeah. So then when we get down to an operating deficit, and again, this would be where your knowledge kicks in because mine kicks out, of $1.6 million, that's what we're basing our rate rise on. However, $4.8 million is actually a break even in our total overall expenses. Again, I'm sorry, this is where my knowledge drops out, but
So if you want to explain that,
is that?
Sharon.
I want to go that question on. You will say.
So effectively what you actually sit there and say is that there's equivalent, if you actually look at revenue as well, what we've actually got is that equivalent jump in our revenue as well. So yes, while we have that increase, we're not actually raising rates on that $4.8 million. So basically the $1.6 million, if you actually go back to the table on page 6 of the agenda, on table 1. So effectively what we're actually doing is to sit there and say, from a rates perspective, is to sit there and say, okay, well, we are raising rates. And so effectively that's $29 million, which is our rate revenue, including waste levy and all that sort of, all those additional components of the rate income. And that, along with our grant funding that we actually receive in our other income sources, basically together from a current perspective is to sit there and say where we have on the normal operations, we have a small operating deficit of 337,000. So effectively, and then we've actually got another 9 net, because I could just not ignore the netball courts. And so on all the other operating initiatives, it's actually costing the council basically nearly $900 million to actually do that. So what you're actually sitting there saying, so majority of our deficit that we're actually incorporating is actually coming from the fact that the new initiatives that we're actually introducing aren't actually being funded by any rate revenue increases. So we're actually absorbing as a council. We're saying we're going to do these things, but we're actually not going to actually fund from that perspective as well. So thank you. Does that make sense? Yes. Somebody had.
Yeah, I think we might wrap this up. We've got a mover and second. If there's no further discussion, Councillor Davies, are you happy for me to put that motion?
All right.
Yes.
Just to wrap up, there was a lot of information added then. It is important for us to understand where our deficit is coming from, and I know it's going to be tough conversations with the community. This is going to be, but we're not splurging on an ISA arena or something. Like this is all extreme.
I didn't see that in the budget.
Yeah. So, yeah, the emotion. But look, our capital expenditures here are some of the highest they've ever been in terms of the important work that we're cutting out. There's a bunch of stuff in there that's because we got a whole bunch of grant money from the state government. But yeah, look, it's true economic factors are influencing everyone. And I think the audit committee, I'll be interested to see what they have to say. I think they'll have some hard truths for us, and they won't necessarily be about what's cut out of the budget. They'll be about that sometimes the most financially responsible thing for us to be doing is potentially raising the rates, which is, I know, isn't what the council wants to hear, but I think that's what the financial advice I've been hearing has been, and what it probably will continue to be. So we need to, continue to work through this as a council.
Thank you. The debate is closed. I'm going to put that motion. All those in favour, please raise your hands. Carried unanimously. Okay, right. Yeah, very much. Yes, thank you. Thank you. I'm just looking at my agenda. I'll close the meeting at 10:46. Thank you. These
and that yeah. We do some things.